A cold, toneless voice cut into the mind of every person on Blue Star at once, announcing that their civilization had been selected for a large-scale survival game called Domain of Gods. That in 30 seconds, every normal adult between 18 and 50 would be pulled bodily into that world. That dying there meant dying in reality, and that if every last player fell, Blue Star itself would be erased. The whole planet convulsed into panic in that instant. Voices everywhere shouting over each other about mass transmigration, about a game that killed for real, about having been stuck at the office just yesterday and now being handed the fate of civilization, with self-declared veteran gamers trying to sound reassuring and getting shouted down by people pointing out that surviving 10 years of online games meant nothing when nobody survives this one yet. Lu Chen, holed up in his rented room, was no exception. Moments earlier, he'd been grinding a dungeon boss in an online game. Now here was a real one dropping on him without warning, and though his face stayed eerily calm, inside he was panicking just as hard as everyone else, turning the words Domain of Gods, Death Deducts Lifespan, and the only chance for Blue Star's survival over and over in his head. Then a pillar of white light fell from the sky and swallowed him whole, and in the space of a blink, he was gone from the room. He came to, dizzy from the spin of transit, standing inside a temple of overwhelming grandeur. A voice welcomed Blue Star's players to the Domain of Gods and told him his basic information was importing. When it finished, a flood of knowledge poured into his mind all at once. Class, level, attributes, equipment, skills, talent, dungeons, monsters, lifespan, rankings. Until he understood, with sudden clarity, that this was no simulation but a real world. Every player began with 100 years of lifespan, and dying would strip away some portion of it depending on where and how you died. Hit 0, and death became final. Though lifespan could also be earned back through leveling, items, quests, and other encounters, meaning that, in theory, a strong enough player could reach actual immortality. Asked to choose a nickname, Lu Chen didn't hesitate. He went with Night God, the name he always used. Once it was confirmed, the system scanned his body and began generating his attribute panel, then asked him to pick a starting class from the row laid out before him. Warrior, Knight, Assassin, Archer, Mage, Priest, Summoner. He chose Archer, reasoning that a ranged class was simply safer. In a world where death cost you years of your life, you wanted to be doing damage from a distance, not throwing yourself into melee range. With his class locked in, the system moved on to awakening his talent, and Lu Chen braced himself, since he already knew talent set the ceiling on a player's whole future. Grades ran from weakest to strongest as F, E, D, C, B, A, S, S, and S. An A rank draw alone would make you 1 in a million. And S rank would turn you into a talent every major faction fought to recruit, and S or SES were said to be rare enough to alter a nation's destiny. When the awakening finished, though, the results stopped him cold. He'd pulled a unique eternal grade talent called Infinite Backpack, a tier that supposedly didn't even exist above SS. The details appeared before him a moment later. Any item placed inside the backpack would have its quantity become infinite, and the talent itself carried the highest rule priority in the game, unable to be sealed, plundered, copied, or probed by anyone. Lu Chen stared at the panel for a long 3 seconds before he started to smile, his mind racing through the implications. Potions, gold, equipment, all of it infinite? If that held true, he wasn't just starting strong. He was sitting on what amounted to an infinite resource vault disguised as a mere backpack. A notification told him his talent awakening was complete and that he'd be teleported to Novice Village No. 9,527, and that a novice gift pack had already been dropped into his inventory for him to claim. White light swallowed him again, and he landed in the plaza of a rough-hewn novice village, streaks of light flashing all around as wave after wave of Blue Star players arrived. Chatter broke out immediately, people marveling at how real the world felt, others announcing D-rank or B-rank talents and fishing for teammates, someone pointing out that everyone's backpack now held a starter gift pack from the system. Prompted by that, Lu Chen opened his own infinite backpack and found a gray gift pack waiting inside. He opened it and received a common grade novice longbow, 100 common grade novice arrows, 5 bottles of common grade junior health potion, and 5 bottles of common grade junior mana potion. Then the system notifications began firing rapidly one after another, confirming that each item had been detected entering the infinite backpack. The novice longbow registered at a quantity of 1, while the novice arrow's quantity flipped over to infinite, and the health and mana potions followed the same pattern. When the dust settled, his panel showed novice longbow, novice arrows, junior health potion, and junior mana potion all sitting at an infinity symbol. Lu Chen's expression turned strange as he took it in. For a 10-year veteran of online games, he'd genuinely never seen anything like this, and even he could only half imagine the scale of advantage a talent like this represented over time. Quietly thrilled underneath his calm exterior, he pulled out the novice longbow and equipped it without fuss. Just then, an excited voice rang out nearby. A player calling himself Mad Blade had awakened an A-ranked talent, Berserk Power, boosting attack power by 50%, and was loudly inviting anyone who wanted to survive to team up under him, declaring he'd become the strongest expert in Novice Village No. 9,527. The crowd around him lit up with excitement, people gushing over the rarity of an A-rank pull and begging to be carried, calling a 50% attack boost basically a license to steamroll the early game. Lu Chen spared him only a glancing look before turning away. An A-rank talent was genuinely impressive, enough to mark someone as a child of destiny, but next to an eternal grade talent, it simply wasn't in the same conversation. He decided it was time to move, telling himself they needed to start grinding monsters. That domain of gods had dropped on the entire globe at once, and any time wasted here would only let other countries' players pull ahead, and that if every Huxia player ended up dead, it would simply be game over for all of them. Without lingering, Lu Chen walked straight out toward the edge of the novice village, focused on the fact that killing monsters and leveling up was what mattered now. That only once items started dropping would his infinite backpack begin to show its true, terrifying potential. The moment he crossed out of the novice village's safe zone, a server-wide announcement rang out, naming Night God as the first player to leave the safe zone of Novice Village No. 9,527 and rewarding him with a common grade random class skill book. A pale white skill book materialized silently inside his infinite backpack, followed immediately by the familiar chime confirming it had been detected and its quantity converted to infinite. Lu Chen stopped in his tracks, looking at the skill book sitting at infinity in his inventory, and felt the corner of his mouth curl upward. This, he thought, was where things truly began. Lu Chen started off directly with an infinite skill book. Common tier only, but the thought of being able to learn skills without limit left him thrilled, and he realized that if he wanted, he could plant himself at the entrance of the novice village and wholesale skill books to anyone who passed. Of course, he wasn't that foolish. Before he had enough strength to protect himself, flaunting a power like the infinite backpack was as good as asking for trouble, and an innocent man with too much wealth invites disaster. So instead, he decided to see what skills he could unlock first, and with a thought he used a random class skill book. A prompt told him he'd used a random class skill book of common tier, and congratulated him on obtaining the Archer skill Precision Shooting. Level 1. An active skill that raised the hit rate of his next attack by 10% and its damage by 10%, costing 5 mana points with an 8-second cooldown. Not bad, he thought, nodding. Anything that boosted damage in the early stage was worth having. He used another book and got Gale Step, another archer skill, level 1, an active skill that increased movement speed by 20% for 10 seconds, costing 8 mana points with a 30-second cooldown. His eyes lit up. A speed buff was exactly what he needed, since archers feared nothing more than being closed in on by monsters, and with Gale Step, his early self-preservation had jumped a notch. He kept going. The next book gave him Armor-Piercing Arrow, Level 1, an active skill dealing 120% physical damage while ignoring 10 points of the target's physical defense, costing 6 mana points with a 6-second cooldown. Another gave him Double Shot, Level 1, an active skill that fired 2 consecutive arrows, each dealing 70% physical damage, costing 8 mana points with a 10-second cooldown. And another gave him Eagle Eye, Level 1, a passive skill that increased attack range by 5% and critical strike rate by 1%. 5 skill books, 5 skills, and every single one of them practical. A burst attack, a movement speed buff, a defense-breaking strike, consecutive shots, and a passive amplifier. Ordinary archers started with nothing but a basic shooting skill, yet he hadn't even killed his first monster and already had 6. That was the terror of the infinite skill book. But when he used the 6th random class skill book, the tone of the prompts changed. It told him he'd obtained a duplicate skill, Precision Shooting, and asked whether he'd already mastered it and would like to convert it into skill proficiency. Could duplicates really be turned into proficiency? His eyes brightened. He'd assumed a duplicate would just be wasted, and hadn't expected God's domain to have a mechanism like this at all. He chose to convert, and the system confirmed the conversion was successful. Precision shooting's proficiency rose by 100, and its level increased. Now level 2, its effect upgraded to a 12% boost to hit rate and 12% to damage, costing 6 mana points with the same 8-second cooldown. Liu Chen broke into a wide grin. The infinite skill book didn't just let him learn every common tier skill. It let him stack the levels of all of them too. While other players ground away for days just to level up a skill once, all he had to do was keep feeding himself skill books. It was more cheating than cheating itself. No rush to go farm monsters. He laughed to himself, eyes burning as he looked at the infinite skill book sitting in his backpack. Better to pump up his skills first. He tore through random class skill books one after another, and the prompts kept ringing out. A duplicate armor-piercing arrow raised its proficiency by 100 and pushed its level to 2. A duplicate gale step raised its proficiency by 100 and pushed its level to 3. A duplicate eagle eye raised its proficiency by 100 and pushed its level to 4. The notifications came one after another, his skill panel shifting at an outrageous pace, and within a few minutes, every one of his common tier archer skills had been pushed all the way to level 10. Precision shooting at level 10 now raised hit rate by 30% and damage by 30% at a cost of 15 mana points and a 7-second cooldown. Gale Step at level 10 raised movement speed by 60% for 20 seconds, costing 20 mana points with a 24-second cooldown. Armor-piercing arrow at level 10 dealt 180% physical damage and ignored 100 points of the target's physical defense, costing 18 mana points with a 5-second cooldown. Double Shot at level 10 fired 2 consecutive arrows, each dealing 110% physical damage, costing 20 mana points with an 8-second cooldown. An Eagle Eye at level 10 raised attack range by 30% and critical strike rate by 10%. Looking over his skill panel, Liu Chen let out a deep breath. Was this what it felt like to have infinite resources? It was outrageous. Truly outrageous. He'd only just stepped out of the novice village's safe zone, hadn't killed a single monster yet, and already his skill strength had left ordinary players in the dust by who knew how many streets. Armor-piercing arrow in particular, ignoring 100 points of physical defense. What kind of concept was that? At this stage, the vast majority of novice monsters probably didn't even have 20 points of physical defense to begin with, which meant that when he hit them, it was practically true damage. Eagle Eye was just as absurd in its own way. Attack range up 30%, critical strike rate up 10%. For an archer, that passive was priceless. The farther his range, the safer he was, and the higher his crit rate, the more devastating his ability to kill monsters outright. It was a pity the skill turned out to be only common grade, but Liu Chen didn't dwell on it. There would be plenty of chances to pick up skills of other grades later. Time to go test the damage, he thought, and turned his gaze toward the green-skinned mantis not far off. A LV1 common monster with 80 out of 80 GP, 8 physical attack, 3 physical defense, and no skills of its own. He decided to use it to test his blade, or rather his bow, and drew back his novice longbow, a novice arrow automatically appearing on the string. With infinite arrows, consumption was never a concern. The mantis seemed to sense the danger and jerked its head up, but it was already too late. Liu Chen called out armor-piercing arrow, and the arrow tore through the air with a swoosh, piercing straight through the mantis's head for 166 damage. It died instantly, netting him 10 exp and 3 copper coins, and the moment those coins entered his backpack, a notification informed him that his copper coin quantity had been changed to infinite. Liu Chen fell into a brief, stunned silence, staring at the sudden windfall, before the corners of his mouth slowly curved upward. Copper coins were infinite too? He smiled bitterly, thinking that at this rate even a dog would turn infinite if it wandered into his backpack. Still, he couldn't help but admire the system. Now that money was no object, anything purchasable was his for the taking. With nothing more to consider, he decided that before officially entering the dungeon he'd head into the village and buy up everything worth buying, and turned back toward the novice village. Back in the village square, players were still loudly arguing over how to form teams. At the center of the crowd stood Kuang Dao, boasting about his grade talent that boosted his attack power by 50%, and inviting anyone who wanted to join his party to step forward, so long as they were girls, and pretty ones got priority. Male onlookers sighed in frustration while women clamored for his attention, one claiming to be the campus belle of Jiang University, another declaring he'd surely become the top expert of Novice Village. No. 9,527. A third begging to be taken along as an assassin girl. Kuang Dao, surrounded by admirers, was thoroughly pleased with himself. Until he spotted Lu Chen walking back in from outside the village. He raised an eyebrow and needled him, calling him out as Night God, the first to leave the village, and asking mockingly whether he'd turned back because the monsters outside were too strong for him. The surrounding players all turned to look. Leaving the safe zone first meant nothing on its own in a game where background and teamwork counted for everything, and where dying in the divine domain cost you lifespan. Lu Chen only glanced at Kuang Dao without bothering to answer, uninterested in wasting time on him. Taking the silence as confirmation, Kuang Dao grew smugger, declaring that novice monsters weren't something ordinary people could handle and that it was only natural Lu Chen had gotten scared, generously offering to let him join the party anyway, on the condition that he hand over all his equipment and skill books first. Lu Chen only smiled inwardly. A man with nothing but an A-grade talent and a handful of kills was already bragging this hard, and by convention, people like that tended to die fastest. When Kuang Dao pressed him again to submit, Lu Chen simply said he wasn't interested, then walked straight past the crowd toward the novice village shop, leaving Kuang Dao's smile frozen on his face and the onlookers stunned by his nerve. Kuang Dao's expression darkened as he warned Lu Chen to pray. They never crossed paths in the wild. Without even turning his head, Lu Chen shot back that Kuang Dao had better pray. He never got in his way. Strictly speaking, right now, Kuang Dao's A-grade talent was more immediately useful than Lu Chen's infinite backpack. But Lu Chen knew the gap between them would only keep widening from here. Moments later, Lu Chen stepped into the novice village grocery store and began buying out its entire stock. A return scroll of common grade, a low-level appraisal scroll of common grade for 100 copper coins, a random teleport scroll of common grade for 200 copper coins, and more besides, clearing the shelves without spending a single real cent as each purchase notification confirmed the items had entered his backpack with their quantities changed to infinite. A string of chimes rang out one after another, and Lu Chen's mouth curled with satisfaction. This hit the spot. Watching him pay without so much as a change in expression, the shop owner's eyes turned more serious, and he remarked that this young descender clearly had some skill, adding that the truly good items weren't the ones out on display. Lu Chen raised an eyebrow with interest, and the owner leisurely pulled a wooden box out from under the counter, opening it to reveal 3 items inside, which he called his 3 treasures. The first was a rough storage ring of excellent grade, priced at 5,000 copper coins, which increased backpack space by an additional 10 slots. The second was an incomplete novice village map, also excellent grade, priced at 3,000 copper coins, recording partial areas around Novice Village No. 9,527. The third was a low-level mana recovery crystal, excellent grade, priced at 8,000 copper coins, which restored 5 mana points per second for 60 seconds after use. Seeing the storage ring first nearly broke Lu Chen's composure. An excellent grade item that expanded backpack space was already an outrageous find this early on, since 10 extra slots meant hauling back far more loot from every fight, and for Lu Chen the implications went even further than that. He told the owner plainly that he wanted all 3, and the owner's smile widened, complimenting the young man's eye for quality goods. The purchase notification confirmed he'd bought the rough storage ring, the incomplete novice village map, and the low-level mana recovery crystal for a combined 16,000 copper coins, and immediately after, all the item quantities were changed to infinite. Lu Chen drew in a sharp breath. This thrill was far more visceral than anything he'd felt clicking through a keyboard. He asked the owner if there was anything even better, prompting the man's mouth to twitch at the young man's evident appetite. The owner shook his head and said there was nothing more, that this was only a novice village grocery store, and not some place to buy divine artifacts. Lu Chen just smiled and said that wasn't what he meant, then turned and headed for the neighboring potion shop, using storage ring after storage ring along the way as notifications kept confirming his backpack space, growing by 10 slots each time, until in the span of a few seconds his backpack space had rocketed from its starting 20 slots all the way up to 600. Lu Chen arrived at the entrance of the potion shop, where a middle-aged female NPC asked if the young adventurer needed potions. And without hesitation, he told her to give him one bottle of every kind she had, cutting straight to the point while she stood there slightly stunned before agreeing. A notification flickered past, declaring that the quantity of all potions he'd purchased had been changed to infinite. And just like that, his backpack filled up with an endless supply. Health potions, mana potions, antidotes, hemostatic agents, attribute buffing potions, all of it limitless, along with infinite town recall scrolls and random teleport scrolls. So that as long as he wasn't killed in a single hit, he was basically unkillable now. Can't beat them? Drink potions? Still can't beat them. Random teleport? Still no good. Recall to town. It was all about refusing to play by the rules. From the potion shop, he went straight to the blacksmith shop, where a muscular, brawny man was hammering iron amid continuous clanging, asking without looking up whether Lu Chen was there to buy equipment. Lu Chen glanced over the shelves. Novice iron swords, daggers, staves, longbows, leather armor, cloth armor, shields, all gear meant for other classes that would do him no good, and asked the blacksmith if he had any bows, the best bows available. The blacksmith looked him up and down, having already clocked him as someone wealthy and bold from his earlier spending spree at the potion shop and grocery store. Likely someone who'd awakened the god of wealth talent, and recognizing him as an archer pulled out a fine-grade bow from the back of the shelf. The Gale longbow, fine grade. Level requirement LV1. Physical attack plus 15, agility plus 3, attack speed plus 5%, selling for 10,000 copper coins. Lu Chen's eyes lit up. The novice longbow only added 5 points of physical attack, while this one added 15 plus agility and attack speed on top. And he bought it immediately, the game confirming that 10,000 copper coins had been consumed and that the Gale longbow had entered his backpack with its quantity changed to infinite. He equipped it on the spot, feeling his attack, agility, and attack speed all rise at once, and asked if there were any more like it. But the blacksmith's mouth twitched as he said there were none left. Lu Chen felt a flicker of disappointment, since this novice village really only stocked novice-tier goods, though what he'd gotten was already more than good enough. Time to go farm monsters and level up, he thought. The moment he stepped out of the blacksmith shop, a commotion rose from the square. Word that the big boss Kuangdao was back, that he'd already hit level 2, that as an A-grade talent, he was simply too fierce. Reaching level 2 that fast made him the #1 figure in their novice village. Sure enough, Kuangdao came striding back into view, carrying a blood-stained novice iron saber, trailed by 4 other players, 2 of them injured and pale from what looked like a hard-fought battle, while Kuangdao himself wore an expression of pure complacency, as he bragged that the green-skinned mantises outside were nothing, that following him would mean leveling up faster than anyone else. And the surrounding players, most of whom didn't even dare leave the village, looked on with envy, since reaching level 2 already was the true proof of what an A-grade talent could do. Then Kuangdao spotted Lu Chen coming out of the blacksmith shop and raised an eyebrow, needling him about still being in the village, asking if he'd been so scared by the monsters that he hadn't dared go out. The crowd turned to look at Lu Chen, someone chuckling that he was the one who'd left the village first earlier, only to come running back so fast that he must have really been frightened. Others chiming in that Realm of Gods wasn't an ordinary game, so being afraid of death was only natural, though he had talked back to Big Boss Kuangdao earlier and now just looked ridiculous for it. Lu Chen glanced at Kuangdao. Level 2, so impressive. And couldn't even be bothered to explain himself to a man who was now nothing more than a clown coasting on an A-grade talent. He simply walked straight past him toward the village exit. Kuangdao shouted after him to be careful out there and not to piss himself from fear, laughing loudly. But almost the instant the words left his mouth, Lu Chen activated Gale Step and vanished from everyone's sight, leaving the crowd stunned, wondering how an archer could possibly move that fast, muttering that something felt off, that everything about this was starting to feel wrong. Meanwhile, Lu Chen had already stepped back out into the wilderness, a notification informing him that he had entered Mantis Slope, where several green-skinned mantises roamed the grass nearby. He drew out the Gale longbow, eyes calm, murmured that it was time to start farming monsters, raised his hand, and fired, calling out armor-piercing arrow as the shaft whistled through the air and punched straight through the head of a full HP green-skinned mantis for 348 damage, a critical hit. A notification confirmed he'd successfully killed a LV-1 green-skinned mantis and gained 10 experience points, along with 1 mantis claw of common grade, which entered his backpack with its quantity likewise changed to infinite. The infinite materials had started kicking in, Liu Chen thought with his mouth curving upward. This feeling was simply too satisfying, and in the future, when top-tier materials like dragon scales, phoenix feathers, divine blood, and demon cores dropped, they too would become infinite, which would truly be the moment to showcase the upper limit of his infinite backpack. It was getting more and more ridiculous, he mused, coming back to himself and raising his head toward the green-skinned mantises still scattered across Mantis Slope. He called out armor-piercing arrow, and the arrows whooshed through the air, one after another, piercing the mantises' heads the instant they raised them, each hit landing for 231 damage. Notifications stacking up confirming kill after kill of LV-1 green-skinned mantises for 10x apiece, until one of them dropped gray rabbit meat, common grade. Its quantity immediately turned infinite. Infinite rabbit meat set him laughing. Food mattered plenty in God's domain, since even though leveling up restored status, prolonged fighting still built up hunger, and once the hunger value dropped low enough, it dragged down stamina, speed, and attack until a player had to eat to recover. But now, with endless meat on hand, he could camp out in the wild indefinitely, never needing to shuttle back to the village, which meant far more time spent farming monsters. He pushed forward, arrow after arrow, finding a mantis with every draw of the bow. Dozens of green-skinned mantises falling in just a few minutes as his exp climbed rapidly to 460 out of 1,000 at level 1. Still not fast enough, he thought, shaking his head, since LV-1 green-skinned mantises gave too little experience, and he needed to push deeper. He activated Gale Step, and his speed shot up, carrying him like a gust of wind through the outer reaches of Mantis Slope, until the monsters ahead finally began to change. Larger mantises with faintly red eyes appeared, LV-2 bronze-skinned mantises, common monsters with 180 GP, 18 physical attack, 8 physical defense, and a pounce and bite skill. Without breaking stride, he fired, calling out precision shooting, the arrow crossing dozens of meters to strike dead center between a bronze-skinned mantis's eyebrows for 198 damage and killing it for 20 exp. Dropping a bronze-skinned mantis fang, common grade, which likewise turned infinite the moment it landed in his pack. Tier 2 mantises still died in a single hit. Ordinary players needed to team up and kite them, but he could just stand back and snipe, and anything he set his sights on simply died. He called out double shot, sending 2 arrows out almost together, and 2 more bronze-skinned mantises that had just charged him dropped dead halfway through their rush, each worth another 20 exp. He kept pushing forward, arrows flying as if they cost nothing, never bothering to pick any up the way other players had to, just shooting and shooting wildly at anything that crossed his sight, and in less than 10 minutes a flash of golden light lit up on his body. He'd reached level 2, gaining a year of lifespan, all attributes +1, 5 free attribute points, and 3 skill points. A warm current surging through him as he felt his strength, speed, and stamina all step up a notch. He decided to pour every free point into agility, since for an archer distance and speed were everything. Fast enough, and monsters could never touch him. Far enough range, and he'd always strike first. And the system confirmed his agility rising by 5. Checking his panel, he saw himself listed as nickname Night God, level LV-2, affiliated civilization Blue Star Civilization, affiliated region Novice Village No. 9,527, lifespan 101 years, class Archer, HP 120, 120ths, mana 110, 110ths, physical attack 42, physical defense 11, magical defense 9, agility 22, and critical hit rate 10%. He didn't stop there. Continuing deeper into the grassland as bronze-skinned mantises kept falling one after another and his exp climbed frantically. Until, just as he killed the 80th bronze-skinned mantis, a different notification tone sounded. He had obtained a special item, a blood-stained silver pocket watch of unknown grade, which the system detected entering his infinite backpack but flagged as a unique quest item that could not be infinitely duplicated. His steps paused at that. This was the first time his infinite backpack had ever failed on him. But he quickly reasoned it through. His talent made item quantities infinite, yet the system had judged this particular object a unique quest item. So of course it couldn't be copied, which only confirmed that this pocket watch was no ordinary find. He took it out and examined it. its surface stained with dark blood, cracks visible along its edges, and a line of small engraved characters on the cover reading a message to a beloved daughter, wishing the starlight would protect her forever. His eyes flickered slightly at that. This had all the hallmarks of a hidden quest item, and checking its attributes confirmed it. Blood-stained silver pocket watch. Type special quest item. Description noting it seemed to be an important item lost by a resident of the novice village, and that perhaps he could return to the village to find its owner. A hidden quest, he realized, hardly believing that farming monsters could turn up something like this. Hidden quests were notoriously hard to trigger under normal circumstances, and here he was barely at LV2 stumbling onto one. His luck really was good, he thought, pocketing the silver watch. Still, he didn't head back to the village right away. His X-bar was already more than half full, close enough to LV3 that a little more farming would get him there, and the hidden quest wasn't going anywhere. But his leveling momentum couldn't be interrupted. He pressed on, and as he went deeper, the bronze-skinned mantises began thinning out, replaced by gray-black three-legged insects, LV3 common monsters with 350 GP, 35 physical attack, 15 physical defense, and skills bearing teeth and charge. 3 of them bared their teeth and charged the moment they spotted him. But Lu Chen stayed unhurried, drawing the Gale longbow and calling armor-piercing arrow to pierce the first one's head for 386 damage, a critical hit, killing it for 30 exp. With the remaining 2 closing in, he tapped his feet and activated Gale Step, drifting several meters backward while drawing the bowstring to its limit again, calling out double shot as 2 arrows tore through the air for 126 and 128 damage, instantly emptying 1 insect's HP bar, which he finished off with a basic attack. But just then, the third 3-legged insect lunged straight at him, its teeth closing to less than half a meter from his face. And right as it was about to bite down, a scroll suddenly appeared in Lu Chen's hand. A random teleport scroll flared to life around him, and in the space of a blink Lu Chen simply wasn't where he'd been standing. He reappeared 30 meters off while the 3-legged insect that had lunged for him crashed uselessly into empty ground. He allowed himself a faint smile at that. This, he thought, was how a random teleport scroll was meant to be used. Other players hoarded these things as a last resort, something you only burned through at the very edge of death, but Lu Chen wasn't wired that way. He used them however he pleased, because for him, resources were simply endless, and being able to be that reckless with them was its own kind of pleasure. A shout of precision shooting, and an arrow later, the last 3-legged insect in the swarm was pinned dead to the grass, netting him 30 experience, a piece of common-grade insect skin, and the quiet, absurd satisfaction of watching his insect skin count register as infinite. He kept at it for a while after that, mowing down insect after insect. Quick as the swarm was, between his Gale Step, his scrolls, and the sheer reach of his attacks, nothing in that grass could actually touch him. 10 minutes in, a wash of golden light marked him hitting level 3. All attributes up by 1. A year added to his lifespan. 5 free attribute points and 3 skill points waiting to be spent. Without much thought, he dumped it all into agility again, watching his movement speed climb once more and his grinding get that much faster. Eventually, he stopped pushing deeper and instead pulled out the blood-stained silver pocket watch sitting in his bag, then reached for a town portal scroll and used it. 10 seconds and a flash of white light later, he was back in Novice Village No. 9,527. The village had grown noticeably livelier in his absence. More players were trying their luck outside the walls and getting driven straight back in, cursing about how terrifying it all was, how a pair of green-skinned mantises had nearly killed someone, how a bronze-skinned mantis had tackled a teammate and cost them 3 years of lifespan on the spot, how this game clearly wasn't like any normal online game given how real the monsters felt. In the middle of the square, a crowd had gathered around Kuang Dao. Already level 2, half a bar of experience from level 3. And people were practically begging to join his team. Just as Kuang Dao opened his mouth to speak, a white light dropped from above and Lu Chen stepped out of it. Kuang Dao's expression shifted. A town portal scroll, at this stage, wasn't something ordinary players could afford. 50 copper coins was real money for most of them, so how could a lone wolf like Lu Chen possibly have gotten hold of one? He frowned, sensing somehow that Lu Chen had gotten noticeably stronger, though there was no way to actually confirm his level. In Divine Domain, low-tier appraisal skills only revealed a name, nothing more, unless someone chose to make their details public. Lu Chen paid him no attention and walked on toward the far end of the village, stopping in front of a rundown wooden house in the corner where a little girl in a gray dress sat by the entrance. The moment she looked up and spotted the silver pocket watch in his hand, her voice cracked. Where had he found it? He simply held it out. Deep in Mantis Slope, he told her. She took it with tears already spilling over, whispering that it was her father's, that he'd promised to take her to see the stars when he came back, and that he never had. A hidden quest notification followed almost immediately. The missing hunter, tied to a villager named Irene, whose father had gone into Mantis Slope 3 days earlier to investigate an anomaly with the insect swarms and never returned. Difficulty rated excellent grade, reward unknown. He accepted without hesitation. Irene looked up at him through her tears and asked if he could really find her father, warning that the village chief had said the depths of the grassland were dangerous these days, but that she just wanted to know where he'd gone. Lu Chen told her simply that he would find him. That was when a hoarse voice cut in from the side. An old man with white hair, leaning on a wooden staff, identified as Horn, the chief of Novice Village No. 9527. He fixed Lu Chen with a solemn look and said that Irene's father was the finest hunter the village had, and that if even he had vanished, something genuinely terrifying must be lurking deep in the grassland. Lu Chen, he said flatly, was far too weak for this and would be walking to his death. Lu Chen didn't rise to it, only replied that he intended to go find out regardless. The old man pushed back. Confidence was fine, but blind confidence got people killed. And Lu Chen simply asked what would happen if he actually managed to resolve the whole matter. After studying him for a long moment, Horn said that if he truly could locate Irene's father and deal with whatever anomaly was out there, he would grant an extra reward on behalf of the village itself. Right on cue, a notification announced that the quest had been upgraded to rare grade with an added reward attached, which was exactly the outcome Lu Chen had been angling for. Horn then pressed a potion bottle into his hands. A personal gift, he called it, which turned out to be an excellent grade hunter's potion, boosting damage against beast-type monsters by 20% for 10 minutes, and Lu Chen's own supply of it registered as infinite the instant he received it. He couldn't quite keep the grin off his face at that. A permanent, endlessly available damage boost dressed up as a 10-minute buff was nothing short of absurd in his favor. He thanked the old man briefly and turned to head back out of the village, leaving Horn watching his back and murmuring a quiet hope that he'd come home alive. Word of the hidden quest had already spread through the players who'd overheard the exchange, their excitement rippling out. Night God had landed a hidden quest, and the missing hunter sounded like it came with a solid reward, so people started scrambling to follow and see for themselves. Kuang Dao stood apart from the crowd, his expression darkening. Another hidden quest for Night God. Even he, an A-rank talent holder, had never been handed one. So what made this guy so special? A flicker of greed crossed his eyes. The rewards from something like this were never small, and if he could just take it for himself. He tightened his grip on his iron saber and told the players around him coldly that they were heading into the grassland too. Lu Chen felt the stir of movement behind him without needing to turn around, and it didn't concern him in the least. If they wanted to follow, he thought, they'd first need the life to survive it. Deep in Mantis Slope, Lu Chen triggered Gale Step and shot across the grass like the wind, with Kuang Dao and 4 other players struggling to keep pace behind him. One of them panted about how absurd Night God's speed was, and Kuang Dao, already troubled by the same thought, decided coldly that Night God must have picked up a speed-boosting skill. Rare in the early game, the nearby priest agreed, wondering aloud how he could possibly have gotten one. It grated on Kuang Dao, who as an A-rank talent didn't even have such a skill himself. That this upstart had not only a speed boost, but a hidden quest too, felt deeply unfair, and he refused to believe Night God's talent could outshine his own. Grumbling about how mysterious the kid was acting, he gripped his iron saber and vowed that once they reached the depths of the grassland, he'd see what Night God was really capable of, urging the others not to fall behind. Ahead, Lu Chen paid his pursuers no mind at all. The quest was what mattered. Checking his quest guide, he judged the target wasn't far off, then pulled out dozens of bottles of elite-grade hunter's potion and downed them one after another. The system notifying him each was consumed, and that for the next 100 minutes his damage against beast-type monsters would rise by 20%. He savored the feeling, delighted. Behind him, the players tailing him were stunned to keep finding empty hunter's potion bottles scattered along his path. Everyone marveling that a guy so rich would guzzle them like drinks, grumbling that it felt almost sinful to waste something so precious, and speculating that if these were rewards from the hidden quest, the payout waiting at the end must be enormous, maybe even excellent grade gear. The more they thought about it, the more their hunger to kill him and loot his drops grew. Meanwhile, Lu Chen loosed an armor-piercing arrow that punched straight through a three-legged insect's head for 472 critical damage, killing it instantly and earning 30 exp. The commotion alerted nearby three-legged insects, which charged him, but Lu Chen kept retreating as he drew his bow, firing a double shot that dropped a second one for another 30 exp. With 3 more insects closing in, he casually tore open a random teleport scroll and vanished, leaving them to pounce on empty air, then reappeared 40 meters off and finished the third with a precision shooting arrow. The whole sequence went by smooth and effortless, without a hint of danger. By the time Kuang Dao's group caught up, 7 or 8 three-legged insect corpses already littered the ground, and the players gawked in disbelief that an archer could solo level 3 monsters, not one at a time but in groups, untouched the entire fight, wondering how such absurd damage was even possible. It only soured Kuang Dao's mood further. He himself was only level 2, and even level 2 bronze-skinned mantises demanded caution, while level 3 three-legged insects required full team coordination just to survive. Yet here was Night God kitting a whole pack solo without taking a scratch, shattering whatever sense of superiority Kuang Dao still had left. When a teammate murmured that this Night God didn't seem simple at all, Kuang Dao only sneered back that it didn't matter how strong he was. He was still just one person, and who would end up claiming the hidden quest's reward was far from decided. No one answered him, though privately their confidence was already cracking. Lu Chen fought his way through the monsters and finally reached the spot the quest pointed to. A low, rocky slope scattered with broken arrows and bloodstains. A few three-legged insect corpses among them. Clear signs a battle had already happened there. Crouching to examine the marks, he triggered a notification that he'd discovered the battle traces left by Hunter Ron and should keep following the blood trail. A faint red guideline appeared before his eyes, and he tracked it forward until, behind a giant rock, he found a dilapidated hunting bow. Described in the game as Hunter Ron's usual weapon, apparently bitten clean through by some powerful monster. Kuang Dao's eyes narrowed at the sight. Anything capable of biting through a hunting bow was no ordinary three-legged insect, and he muttered that there might really be a boss-level creature nearby. Pressing on, the smell of blood thickened with every step, and Lu Chen struck down any monster he crossed without hesitation. Another armor-piercing arrow felling a three-legged insect instantly, at which the rest of the pack turned as one, eyes flaring red, and swarmed him. He held his ground this time, his bowstring humming as arrow after arrow rained down, and insects dropped one after another, exp ticking up steadily until he sat right on the edge of level 4. Just as the last one fell, a low howl rolled out from deep within the rocky slope and the grass around them shivered. A dozen larger, black, bloodthirsty three-legged bugs emerged, eyes an eerie blood red, foul saliva dripping from their jaws. The system flagged them as level 4 elite monsters with 800 GP, 80 physical attack, 35 physical defense, and the skills Broken Limb Sweep, Bloodthirsty Charge, and Bloodthirsty Insect Swarm. The watching players erupted. A dozen elites at once. Surely even Kuang Dao's whole team couldn't survive this. Let alone a lone archer, they said. Certain Night God was finished. Kuang Dao's eyes lit with excitement at the opening. If Night God died here, the hidden quest might break, letting them step in to finish it, or at least scoop up whatever items dropped from his death, since dying in Domain not only cost lifespan but carried a chance of dropping backpack items. Licking his lips, he told the others not to rush. They'd move in only once Night God could no longer hold out. When a teammate asked if they meant to save him, Kuang Dao sneered that he wasn't there to save anyone. All he wanted was the quest reward. On the rocky slope, Lu Chen found himself surrounded by more than a dozen bloodthirsty three-legged bugs, but he wasn't rattled. Only mildly surprised to see they were elite monsters, which meant this hidden quest's rewards probably wouldn't be bad. The bugs were fast, and almost the instant their inspection info appeared they all rushed him at once, so he immediately used a random teleport scroll and vanished. But even after he reappeared more than 20 meters away, 3 of the bugs spun around and lunged straight back at him. Aggro locked, he realized, raising an eyebrow. Smarter than the usual whiteboard monster, but that was all. He drew his bow and layered precision shooting with armor-piercing arrow, and the arrow tore through the air and struck the lead bug in the eye for a critical 702 damage, dropping its health bar to 0 instantly. A basic attack finished it off, and the system confirmed he'd killed a level 4 bloodthirsty 3-legged bug for 60 experience, along with 1 bloodthirsty claw of elite grade. And a notice that the quantity of bloodthirsty claws had now been changed to infinite. But before he could catch his breath, the rest of the bugs were already on him. One activated a skill called Bloodthirsty Charge, its body flashing into a black shadow as its speed spiked, and it slammed into his chest before he could react. There simply hadn't been time to dodge. The hit took 76 off his health, dropping him past half in an instant, and the onlookers gasped that Night God had been hit and was at low health, that he was done for. Kuang Dao's eyes flashed as his blade hand came up. But then everyone froze, watching Lu Chen calmly pull out a primary health potion and down it in one gulp, restoring 50 health points, then another bottle for another 50, then a third for another 50, fully topping off his health in seconds. The crowd was stunned. Could potions even be chugged like that? Were primary health potions free? Had he really just downed 3 in a row? Wasn't that excessive? Ordinary players hoarded a single potion for the direst emergency, but Lu Chen drank 3 the moment his bar dipped, and to him it felt completely natural. His potions were infinite, so why save them for some rainy day? If anything, he felt 3 bottles was already showing restraint. He called out double shot, loosing 2 arrows into the same bug for 231 and a critical 520, dropping it. And as he kept retreating, he kept unloading damage, burning through random teleport scrolls, health potions, mana potions. Every consumable used as freely as if it cost nothing, leaving the handful of people watching from the shadows completely dumbfounded. A few minutes later, the last bloodthirsty 3-legged bug went down, awarding another 60 experience for the level 4 kill, and the system announced he'd leveled up to level 4, his lifespan increasing by 1 year, granting him +1 to all attributes, 5 free attribute points, and 3 skill points. Golden light washed over him, and his state recovered fully. He dumped every free point straight into agility, and the system confirmed the allocation. Agility +5. The onlookers were speechless, someone muttering in disbelief that this had been over a dozen level 4 elite monsters and he just kited them all to death as an archer. Kuang Dao ground his teeth in fury. Then a far more terrifying roar rolled out from deeper in the rocky slope, and the ground shook faintly as a blood-colored insect nearly the size of a small calf emerged. Half a blood-stained hunter's coat still clamped in its jaws, its crimson eyes locked on Lu Chen. The inspection revealed it as a level 5 bloodthirsty insect king, a rare grade boss, with 12,000 out of 12,000 health points, 180 physical attack, 80 physical defense, 40 magical defense, and a skill set of bloodthirsty bite, wild roar, insect king summon, and berserk. Every player's scalp went numb at the sight. A boss, and rare grade at that. This quest was insane. They should run. This wasn't something current stage players could touch. A level 5 rare grade boss could kill any of them in a single careless swipe. And no matter how strong Night God was, beating it outright should have been impossible. But Kuang Dao's eyes lit with greed. A boss. A rare grade boss. If Night God wore it down first, maybe they could steal the kill. He told his group to get ready, to move in once Night God had worn the boss's health down, and when a nervous teammate protested that it was a boss, Kuang Dao snapped back, asking what there was to fear. If Night God could fight it, why couldn't they snatch it? Since securing the final hit meant the reward was theirs. Everyone's breathing quickened at the thought of a boss first kill, a hidden quest, rare grade drops, the kind of prize that could drive anyone half mad. Lu Chen heard all of this behind him and glanced back at Kuang Dao's group with a level gaze, telling them coolly that if they wanted to snatch the boss, they were welcome to try, provided they managed to stay alive. At that moment, the bloodthirsty insect king let out an angry roar and surged forward at shocking speed. Lu Chen tore open another random teleport scroll and vanished, but the boss reacted almost instantly, lunging at him again the moment he reappeared. Faster, he noted, narrowing his eyes. As expected of a rare-grade boss, and far quicker than the 3-legged bugs, ordinary kiting probably wouldn't cut it here. So he pulled out a bottle of primary agility potion and drank it, boosting his agility by 10% for 60 seconds. Then followed it with a primary strength potion for another 10% boost to strength, also for 60 seconds. The onlookers were beyond stunned at this point. muttering that he was popping potions again, that an elite-grade attribute potion cost thousands of copper coins a bottle at the shop, wondering how he could bear to drink it so freely and just how rich this guy actually was. Kwang Dao's eyelid twitched with a growing sense of dread. Potion finished, Lu Chen drew his Gale longbow, remarking that since it was a boss, he'd see how many arrows it could take, and layered precision shooting with armor-piercing arrow again. The arrow streaked toward the bloodthirsty insect king's eyes, but the creature tilted its head at the last moment, dodging the weak point, and the arrow buried itself in its shoulder instead for 632 damage. Solid, but nowhere near enough against 12,000 health. Stung. The boss let loose wild roar, an invisible sound wave that washed over Lu Chen and slowed him, cutting his movement speed and attack speed by 20% each for 10 seconds. Slowed, he noted, eyebrow raised. And the boss seized the opening, lunging in with claws tearing through the air, slamming into him for 168 damage and all but emptying his health bar. The crowd erupted with excitement, shouting that he was at low health. That night god was finally going to die, and a fierce light lit up in Kwang Dao's eyes as he called for his group to move in. But before Lu Chen even hit the ground, a fistful of potions had already appeared in his hand. Not one bottle, but a whole handful. And he tipped his head back and drank them down. His HP was restored to full in an instant. After landing, Lu Chen casually tore open a random teleport scroll and reappeared 50 meters away, looking over at the bloodthirsty insect king with a grin, taunting it that its damage wasn't bad but a pity it couldn't one-shot him. And since it couldn't, it was going to die. The insect king seemed to understand him, its crimson eyes burning even hotter with rage as it roared up at the sky and summoned 6 bloodthirsty three-legged bugs in a flash of white light. A gleam lit Lu Chen's eyes as he wondered aloud whether it could even summon mobs, and he cut them down in rapid succession with double shot, armor-piercing arrow, and precision shooting, the three-legged bugs falling one after another for exp with each kill. Meanwhile, Kwang Dao could barely contain himself, muttering that that bastard kept chugging potions, and that at this rate Night God had a real shot at the boss rewards. If that happened, all his time hiding here would have been for nothing. He shouted for his team to charge and snatch the boss, bringing 4 teammates rushing straight at the bloodthirsty insect king, hollering at Lu Chen that the boss didn't belong to him alone and it was finders keepers. Lu Chen calmly replied, "All right," which completely threw Kwang Dao off balance. He sputtered that this wasn't how the plot was supposed to go, that Lu Chen was supposed to refuse. But there was no time to dwell on it with the boss's HP nearly gone, so he pushed the thought aside and rushed in, slashing at the insect king's side. What he hadn't accounted for was its aggro. Having been kited into a fury by Lu Chen, the boss reacted to Kwang Dao's sudden approach with an instinctive backhand claw that sent him flying and emptied his health bar in one blow, dealing 286 damage and killing him instantly, with a notification confirming his lifespan had been reduced by 5 years. White light flashed and Kwang Dao vanished from the spot, leaving his 4 stunned teammates frozen in place, gasping in disbelief that a player with great talent had been one-shot by a single claw and had 5 years of lifespan deducted just like that. They screamed for each other to run, already regretting having followed Kwang Dao to snatch the kill. But in the adult world, there's no medicine for regret, only a price to pay. And the insect king tore into the fleeing crowd, claws flashing, until 4 more beams of white light lit up one after another and Kwang Dao's whole team was wiped out. Now it's just the 2 of us, Lu Chen thought with a leisurely look, telling the insect king he'd wear it down slowly. It roared in response, its crimson eyes fixed on him as its limbs suddenly tensed and the ground exploded beneath it, its massive body becoming a streak of blood-red shadow as it lunged at him with terrifying speed. Even though Lu Chen had already begun retreating, the gap closed fast. So he used random teleport, vanishing in a flash of white light just as the boss's claw missed and smashed a deep pit into the earth where he'd stood. He reappeared 60 meters away, and the instant he steadied himself, he drew the Gale longbow to its limit and fired an armor-piercing arrow that tore through the air and struck the insect king's side abdomen for 521 damage. The boss charged again, and Lu Chen kept retreating while chugging potions, firing double shot for 2 consecutive hits of 238 and a critical 536, steadily whittling down its health bar. Meanwhile, back at the Resurrection Plaza of Novice Village No. 9527, A beam of white light deposited Kuang Dao at the resurrection point, his face pale and his whole body trembling as he muttered that the moment had felt far too real. The image of the insect king's claw smashing his brains out still flashing through his mind. His first real taste of fear about death. A notification told him his lifespan had been deducted by 5 years for that death, leaving him with 96 years remaining, and he could hardly believe it. Cursing that a mere level 5 boss's attack had cost him that much? In God's domain, leveling up in certain encounters granted lifespan bonuses, but ordinary deaths and boss kills likewise deducted large amounts, with the exact toll varying depending on the boss's strength. He clicked his tongue in disbelief. Back on Boulder Slope, the battle between Lu Chen and the bloodthirsty Insect King had reached a fever pitch, its HP worn down to a third, when it roared skyward and a layer of blood-red light spread across its body, entering a berserk state that boosted its attack speed by 30%, its movement speed by 30%, but also increased the damage it took by 10%. Lu Chen noted with satisfaction that taking more damage while berserking just meant it would die faster, and used Gale Step, firing precision shooting and armor-piercing arrow together in a strike that pierced the Insect King's left eye for a devastating 1386 damage. A weak point hit combined with a critical, drawing a miserable screech from the boss as its health bar plummeted. Hard as it was to land a hit on a boss's weak point, the payoff was clearly enormous, and Lu Chen seized the momentum, continuing to fire. Over a dozen seconds later, the blood-red glow finally dimmed as the berserk state ended, and a cold glint flashed in Lu Chen's eyes as he declared it was over, drawing the Gale longbow once more, stacking precision shooting, armor-piercing arrow, and his damage-boosting potions before loosing an arrow that turned into a cold beam of light and pierced straight through the Insect King's throat for 1522 damage. Another weak point critical. The boss's massive body stiffened, then crashed to the ground, dead. A LV5 rare boss kill that rewarded Lu Chen with 1 Insect King leather armor, 1000 exp, 5 silver coins, 10 skill points, and a level up to LV5 that granted 3 more years of lifespan along with +1 to all attributes, 5 free attribute points, and 3 more skill points. Golden light descended and restored his status in an instant. At the same time, an announcement rang out across all of Novice Village No. 9527, declaring that the Player Knight God had achieved the first kill of the rare boss Bloodthirsty Insect King, earning the rewards for being the first in the village to down a rare boss. 20 prestige and a random career skill book of rare grade. The village fell into stunned silence before erupting. Players couldn't believe Night God had actually killed a rare boss, especially given that Kuang Dao had just been one-shot by the very same boss, and the gap between the two of them now felt almost absurd. On the Resurrection Plaza, Kuang Dao's face went pale all over again hearing the news, struck by the sheer size of the gap between himself, one shot by the boss, and Night God, who'd taken the first kill. Back on Boulder Slope, Lu Chen paid no attention to the announcement, his focus already on his backpack, where notifications confirmed he'd gained the Insect King leather armor of rare grade, silver coins, and a rare grade career skill book, all with their quantities changed to infinite. His mouth curved slowly upward. Infinite rare career skill books. Now that was something. The Insect King leather armor turned out to be rare grade gear, level 5, and the numbers were generous. 300 health, 35 physical defense, 10 agility, and a 10% reduction in damage taken from beast-type monsters. Lu Chen didn't hesitate, equipping it on the spot, and felt the surge the moment it settled onto him, his health, defense, and agility all climbing at once. With that done, he turned his attention to something he'd been looking forward to even more. The rare grade skill books. The basic grade ones had already let him max every one of his early skills to level 10, so he found himself genuinely curious what the rare tier would hand him. An AO attack, some crowd control, a burst of raw damage, or maybe the survival tool archers were so short on. He rubbed his hands together, admitting to himself that skipping straight from basic to rare, bypassing fine grade entirely, was more than a little exciting. He cracked open a random class skill book, rare grade first, and the result came back immediately. Storm, Arrow, Rain. An active skill that rained arrows across a designated area, hitting everything within a 10-meter radius for 120% physical damage, costing 80 mana with a 30-second cooldown. An AO skill on the very first pull left him lit up inside. Clearing groups of monsters had always been his weak point, since up to now his kills had leaned almost entirely on single-target bursts, and against a swarm his efficiency simply hadn't been explosive enough. With a 10-meter radius to work with, that problem was effectively solved. From here on, he could just tear through everything indiscriminately. He kept going without pausing. The next book gave him Shadow Strike Arrow, a single-target burst skill that fired a shadow-imbued arrow for 180% physical damage, with an extra 100% if it struck the target's back or a weak point. 60 mana, 12-second cooldown. Solid, he thought, and pressed on. The third book produced Wind Guardian, a defensive skill that threw up a wind shield absorbing damage equal to 50% of his max health while boosting his movement speed by 20% for 15 seconds, at a cost of 100 mana and a 60-second cooldown. A defensive option was exactly what he'd been missing. Until now, he'd leaned on potions and teleport scrolls to keep himself alive, which worked but never felt especially elegant. Whereas Wind Guardian let him throw the shield up before a boss even closed the distance, giving him a real cushion of error for the first time. From there, the books started producing duplicates, and each time a prompt asked whether he wanted to convert the repeat into proficiency, he agreed without a second thought. Storm Arrow Rain gained 500 proficiency and jumped to level 2. Rare grade duplicates. It turned out, converted into far more proficiency than the basic grade ones ever had, so he kept cracking books open one after another. Shadow Strike Arrow picked up its own 500 proficiency and rose to level 2. Then Wind Guardian gained 500 and climbed all the way to level 3, notification tones stacking on top of each other across his screen. A few minutes later, all three rare skills sat maxed at level 10. Storm Arrow Rain now hit a 20-meter radius for 260% physical damage at 160 mana with a cooldown shortened to 20 seconds, and its level 10 trait refunded 5 seconds of cooldown per kill, up to a cap of 20. Shadow Strike Arrow now dealt 360% physical damage on a hit, with weak point strikes adding another 240%, costing 120 mana on an 8-second cooldown, and its level 10 trait guaranteed a critical strike on any weak point hit. Wind Guardian's shield now absorbed a full 200% of his max health and boosted movement speed by 45% for 20 seconds, at 180 mana and a 45-second cooldown, with its level 10 trait granting immunity to the first crowd control effect he took while the shield was active. With that settled, he decided it was finally time to head back and turn in his quest. He pulled out his return scroll, called out to return to the city, and 10 seconds later a flash of white light dropped him back in Novice Village. No. 9,527. To find the whole village in an uproar over the announcement that Night God had scored the first kill of a rare grade boss. Players everywhere were talking over each other, some in disbelief that they were still fighting mantises while he was already killing bosses. Others asking why the announcement wasn't about Mad Blade, the supposed A-grade talent. Until someone pointed out that Mad Blade had actually been sent flying by that very boss with a single claw swipe. His whole squad wiped out, which only fed a growing debate over whether Night God's hidden talent might be S-grade or even S-grade. Off in the corner of the Resurrection Plaza, Mad Blade stood pale and silent. The boss hadn't just cost him 5 years of lifespan, it had apparently taken his temper with it too, and the sheer realism of nearly dying had left him unwilling to gamble carelessly with his life again. Lu Chen made his way to the little girl, and the moment she saw him, she asked if he'd found her dad. He said nothing for a moment, then held out the blood-stained half of a hunter's coat. Her face went white. She took it with shaking hands, tears spilling over as she whispered that her father really wasn't coming back. Lu Chen didn't soften it. He told her plainly that the man was almost certainly dead, but that he'd been avenged. She curled around the half-coat and cried for a long while. Village Chief Horn came over not long after, leaning on his staff, and sorrow crossed his face at the sight of the coat. Ron, he said, had been a good hunter and a good father both. Then he turned to Lu Chen and told him solemnly that he'd not only completed the commission, but resolved a serious hidden danger threatening the village. The quest notification confirmed it. The missing hunter, completed with a perfect evaluation, for having killed the bloodthirsty Hound King responsible for Hunter Ron's death and clearing the hidden objective alongside it. The rewards followed. 2,000 experience, 30 reputation points, 10 silver coins, a rare Great Hunter emblem as a special reward, and a village chief's recommendation letter as an extra reward. And his experience bar surged visibly as it all poured in. The Hunter emblem turned out to be a special accessory adding 100 health and 15 agility, along with a 10% damage bonus against beast-type monsters, described as fit only for those the hunters themselves recognized. It entered his inventory registering as infinite in quantity, and he equipped it at once, feeling his stats climb again. The recommendation letter puzzled him for a moment, until its description explained itself. Holding it would let him initiate the first class transfer quest at the class transfer hall in the main city once he hit level 10. And because his hidden quest evaluation had come back perfect, the letter would raise his odds of triggering a rare class transfer route. That caught his attention. Class transfer was something every player had to go through after level 10. Without it, further leveling simply wasn't possible. Ordinary players could pick up a basic class transfer quest at the class transfer hall, but hidden classes, rare classes, and special routes all demanded extra conditions, and this letter was his ticket into that tier. The village chief told him he'd proven his strength, and that once he reached level 10, he'd be free to leave the novice village for Blackstone City to undergo his first transfer. Though he added a warning that going further than that would require accumulating enough reputation. When Lu Chen asked what reputation was actually good for, the chief explained that it represented the world of God's recognition of him. That higher reputation drew the attention of powerful figures, factions, and special NPC. That within the novice village, it unlocked the reputation shop. And that in the main city, it could be spent on limited stock supplies, used to accept high-level quests, or even used to trigger special class transfer routes. Checking his panel, Lu Chen found he'd earned 20 reputation for the first boss kill and 30 for the hidden quest, 50 points in total. And right on cue, a notification chimed that his reputation had crossed 50 and unlocked the novice village 9,527 reputation shop. A shop interface opened before him. A rare grade primary skill upgrade scroll priced at 10 reputation plus 1 silver coin, with a stock of 1. A random fine equipment chest at 5 reputation plus 50 silver coins, 3 in stock. A low-level dungeon location scroll at 20 reputation plus 5 silver coins, 1 in stock. And a rare grade primary lifespan fruit at 30 reputation plus 10 silver coins, 1 in stock, which added 5 years of lifespan on use. When Lu Chen laid eyes on the last item, a lifespan fruit, his mind went blank for a second. An item that directly increased lifespan was worth more than any equipment or skill could ever be, since in God's domain lifespan was life itself. Lost gear could be farmed again, a missing skill Ray learned, but once lifespan ran out, death was final. Without a moment's hesitation, he bought it, and the system confirmed the purchase of a primary lifespan fruit, rare grade, for 30 prestige points and 10 silver coins, noting that his infinite backpack now held an infinite quantity of them. His breath caught as he pulled one out. Pale gold, glowing softly, and used it immediately, gaining 5 years of lifespan. Between level 1 and level 5, he'd already gained 4 years total, and with this fruit added, his lifespan now stood at 111. Since the backpack held an infinite supply, he moved to use more right away, only for a notification to inform him that primary lifespan fruits of the same type were capped at 10 uses. Surprised at first, he quickly grinned. 10 fruits still meant 50 more years, and used them all, watching his lifespan climb to 156. He marveled that if anyone else in the novice village knew, they'd lose their minds. Other players bled lifespan away with every death, while he'd just stacked his up to 156 in one sitting, with another 50 guaranteed to be added daily going forward, not even counting bonuses from leveling or special encounters. Coming back to himself, he wondered aloud whether he was actually on track for immortality in God's domain. He turned back to the prestige shop, wishing he had enough points to buy everything, but settled on the low-level dungeon positioning scroll instead, spending 20 prestige points and 5 silver coins. It too entered his infinite backpack in unlimited quantity, described as able to locate a nearby low-level dungeon entrance suited to his level. Dungeons in God's domain came in several tiers, ordinary ones and higher-level ones. And with that in mind, he decided it was time to find one. Using the scroll, he watched it burn into a pale blue light that shot off toward the northwest of the novice village. And a moment later, the system confirmed it had located a low-level dungeon called Mirror Lake Ruins. Levels 5 to 8, capped at 1 to 3 players, requiring 1 silver coin to enter, and described as an ancient ruin shrouded in mist beneath the surface of Mirror Lake, seemingly reflecting another world. Lu Chen was amused that entry even had a condition. Despite years of online gaming, this was new to him. But with an infinite supply of silver coins, 1 ticket meant nothing to him. He set off toward the dungeon's location right away. Along the way, he made no effort to avoid monsters. Lone ones fell instantly to Shadow Strike Arrow, while groups were wiped out with a single Storm Arrow Rain, which dealt a brutal 260% damage to everything within a 20-meter radius. Arrows killed off a pair of three-legged insects for 30 XP each, and the system noted that Storm Arrow Rain's cooldown refunded on a successful kill. He didn't break stride. About a dozen minutes later, he arrived at a lake wrapped in white mist, its surface unnervingly still without a single ripple, an ancient half-submerged structure sitting at its center. A prompt informed him he'd reached the entrance to the Mirror Lake ruins and asked whether he wanted to spend a silver coin to enter. He confirmed. The coin was deducted, and ripples spread across the water as a mirror-like portal opened and swallowed him whole. Inside, the system marked the difficulty as normal and laid out the objective. Ignite the 3 lighthouses at the lake center and kill the Mirror Lake Guard. Lu Chen opened his eyes to find himself on a stone bridge flanked by pitch-black water. Eerie, except that his reflection still showed clearly despite the water's blackness. He grumbled about the game turning what should have been ordinary into horror, wondering why it had to be this creepy. And when his reflection lifted its head and gave him a stiff, unsettling smile, he simply looked away and kept walking. Ahead, a shabby lantern appeared. A guiding lake lantern, a dungeon item priced at 1 silver coin, said to illuminate the true path through Mirror Lake for 3 minutes. He smirked at yet another silver coin purchase, noting how unfriendly this dungeon clearly was to ordinary players. Skip the lantern, and you'd likely wander onto the wrong path. Buy it, and your wallet would ache. But fortunately, his silver coins were infinite. He bought one, watched it join his infinite backpack, then pulled out a whole pile and scattered them across the bridge as he walked, lighting up what had been a pitch-black surface, simply because he could afford to be that extravagant. A few steps later, he noticed something strange, a fork in the bridge that hadn't been visible before, one he'd never have spotted without the lanterns. Proof, he thought, that broke players really shouldn't wander this dungeon blind, or they'd die without ever knowing why. He shook off the thought and followed the fork forward. After walking a dozen or so meters, the lake water below suddenly churned, and 3 pale figures crawled out of it. LV5 drowned wraiths, elite monsters, each with 1,500 GP, 120 magic attack, 30 physical defense, and 80 magic defense, wielding Waterbind and Grudge Shriek. A magic-type elite, he noted. Not bad. When one hit him with Grudge Shriek, his Wind Guardian trait triggered automatically, the cyan shield around his body flickering as it neutralized the crowd control effect entirely. Calling out Wind Guardian, he watched the shield expand, then raised his hand and fired off a Storm Arrow Rain. The arrow rain fell, and 3 drowned wraiths were pierced by the dense volley. 1208 damage to one, a critical 2718 to another, 1196 to the third. Killing one of them outright, while the remaining 2 staggered with their health bars nearly wiped away. Lu Chen finished them off with 2 basic attacks, and the system confirmed the kill of a level 5 drowned wraith for 90 experience, along with 1 wraith water bead of fine grade, which entered his infinite backpack with its quantity immediately changed to infinite. Storm Arrow Rain's cooldown was also refunded by 5 seconds for landing the kill. His eyes lit up. Dungeon monsters gave more experience than wild ones, and the materials were rarer too, even if he didn't yet know what they were for. No matter, he figured. He had plenty of backpack space to just hold on to them. He pushed on, cutting down every mob in his path, until he opened a stone door and arrived at the first Heart of the Lake lighthouse, where a huge, weed-covered creature crouched guarding it. Inspection revealed it as a fine-grade guard with 6,000 out of 6,000 GP, 150 physical attack, 120 physical defense, 60 magical defense, and skills including Stone Skin, Algae Entanglement, and Heavy Hammer Smash. 6,000 HP was a lot, he thought, but it probably wouldn't survive more than a few arrows. Without hesitation, he drew the Gale longbow and fired a Shadow Strike arrow, the shot turning into a black shadow that punched straight into the crack in the Algae Stone statue's chest for 1680 damage. And because it struck the weak point, it triggered a guaranteed critical hit for another 3,920. The 2-stage burst instantly stripping over half its health. Before it could raise a hand to counter, his second arrow was already loosed. Armor-piercing arrow for 706. And the statue's massive body crashed to the ground. The kill confirmed the fine grade guard defeated, granting 300 experience and 1 stone statue core of fine grade. Its quantity likewise changed to infinite. He walked up to the lighthouse and was asked whether he wished to ignite the first Heart of the Lake lighthouse. He did, and as it flared to life, the black lake water receded sharply, revealing a second hidden path in the distance, with the dungeon progress now marked at 1 out of 3. Looking toward the white mist further ahead, the corner of his mouth curled up. This dungeon was clearly different from an ordinary grinding dungeon, full of mechanisms, heavy in consumption, and complex in its routes. An ordinary player coming in here would basically be trapped to death. Fortunately, he thought, he wasn't an ordinary person. Carrying a lake lamp, he stepped onto the second mirror lake stone path, tossing handfuls of lamps ahead whenever the way went dark. Illuminate first. Deal with it later. Musing to himself with a laugh that if paying to win could solve most problems, then infinite paying to win could solve all of them. As he stepped onto the stone slabs, dozens of pale arms reached up from beneath the bridge, and though he was caught by the drag of the mirror lake wraiths, his Wind Guardian trait triggered and immunized the control effect entirely, a cyan shield flashing and shattering the arms with wind blade the instant they touched him. Without even looking, he raised a hand and unleashed Storm Arrow Rain, the dense arrows crashing down and killing a level 5 Mirror Lake Wraith for 90 experience, dropping a Mirror Lake Remnant of fine grade whose quantity was likewise set to infinite, and refunding Storm Arrow Rain's cooldown entirely for the kill. This skill, he thought, was simply divine. As long as mana and damage held out, he could spam it endlessly, an unimaginable, unending rain of arrows raining from the sky, and it couldn't be more satisfying. He pressed on, and wraith after wraith crawled up from the water only to be smothered the instant they surfaced, each fresh volley of arrow rain turning another batch of monsters into experience and materials. Within a few minutes, he reached the area near the second lighthouse, where instead of a guardian there stood only a huge water mirror at the center of the Heart of the Lake platform. As he approached, his own reflection appeared within the mirror's surface, and the next moment it slowly lifted its head and grinned back at him. The dungeon mechanism had triggered, generating what the system called a mirror lake reflection. The water mirror shuddered, and a figure identical to Lu Chen stepped out of it. Inspection identified it as a level 5 Mirror Shadow Knight God, a special monster with unlisted HP and attack power, described as a reflection copied by the rules of Mirror Lake, possessing some portion of the challenger's attributes, equipment, and skills. Lu Chen raised an eyebrow. Copying him? An interesting mechanism, he thought. The Mirror Shadow Knight God raised its own longbow and opened distance with movements nearly as fluid as his own, calling out Storm Arrow Rain in a cold voice, and arrows rained down directly onto Lu Chen's position. But rather than tank it, he casually tore open a random teleport scroll and vanished, the volley missing him entirely as he reappeared on the far side of the platform and fired a backhanded Shadow Strike arrow. The reflection tore open its own random teleport scroll in response, a flash of white light carrying it clear of the shot as well. Lu Chen smiled. Even his scrolls had been copied. This reflection had mimicked not just his skills but his combat habits too. But, he thought, there was something it couldn't copy. And he pulled out a fistful of health potions and downed them in one go, while the reflection fumbled and, after some delay, managed to produce only a single potion. It could copy his equipment, his skills, even simulate some of his consumables. But it couldn't replicate the true rules of the infinite backpack. The two traded Storm Arrow Rain, Shadow Strike Arrow, and double shot back and forth, their rhythms perfectly mirrored at first. But as the fight dragged on, the reflection's movements began visibly falling behind his own. Copying him. Could it really keep up? He taunted, and fired another Shadow Strike arrow. The reflection instinctively tried to teleport away but had no scrolls left, forced instead into a desperate sideways dodge. But the arrow was too fast, clipping its shoulder and piercing through for 1480 damage, staggering it. Lu Chen gave it no room to recover, calling out Storm Arrow Rain again, the dense volley smothering the entire platform and forcing the reflection down to under a third of its health. "It's over," he said, drawing the Gale longbow once more and unleashing precision shooting, armor-piercing arrow, and Shadow Strike arrow in rapid succession. 3 arrows landing almost simultaneously for 980, a critical 2310, and a weakness critical of 4080. And the Mirror Shadow Knight God's body seized up before dissolving into mist. The kill was confirmed. Level 5 Mirror Shadow Knight God, Special Monster, defeated. granting 800 experience, 1 mirror shadow fragment of rare grade. Its quantity immediately set to infinite, and a reflection mark. The fragment's description noted it as a special material left behind by a shattered mirror lake reflection, usable to forge mirror-type equipment or as a quest material. Not bad, he thought. As for the reflection mark, its description explained that holding it allowed him to ignite the second Heart of the Lake lighthouse, and it carried a remark marking it a unique dungeon item that could not be copied. Asked whether he wished to ignite the second lighthouse, he did, and it flared to life, pushing the dungeon progress to 2 out of 3, the outline of a third lighthouse emerging in the distance. But at the same moment, the entire lake began to tremble, water surging as black shadows swam beneath the surface, as though something were stirring awake. A warning appeared, informing him that igniting 2 Heart of the Lake lighthouses had roused the presence sleeping at the bottom of the lake, that the dungeon's difficulty was beginning to climb, that the mirror lake pollution value now stood at 30%, and that once it reached 100%, the dungeon's final boss would awaken early and enter an enhanced state. Pollution value? A time-limited mechanic? This dungeon clearly wasn't an ordinary monster-grinding grind. It didn't rely on sheer numbers to pile up difficulty, but instead used mechanics to force players to move fast, since any ordinary team unfamiliar with the route would burn through time, just solving puzzles and traveling. And once the pollution value maxed out and the final boss got strengthened, it was essentially a wipe. Realizing he needed to pick up the pace, Liu Chen pulled out another row of guiding lake lamps to light the road ahead, then stacked Gale Step, Wind Guardian, and a primary agility potion together for a triple acceleration, his figure blurring into an afterimage as he sped toward the third lighthouse. Monsters kept crawling out from the bottom of the lake along the way, but he didn't bother picking them off one by one. He simply raised his hand and unleashed Storm Arrow Rain, the arrows falling in a boom that dropped monsters in patches, the cooldown refunding so he could cast it again and again, boom after boom, until the entire stone path through the middle of the lake had been scoured clean by his arrow rain. Each LV6 Jinghu polluted body he killed gave 120 experience and a polluted crystal of rare grade, which immediately entered his infinite backpack with its quantity changed to infinite. Another rare material gone infinite, and his smile only grew, since this dungeon seemed to fatten up the more he farmed it. 10 minutes later, the third lighthouse came into view, with no monsters or guards around it, only a dilapidated stone platform with 3 slots embedded in it, and a prompt explaining that igniting the lighthouse required submitting 100 Jinghu remnants, 50 Wraith water beads, and 10 polluted crystals. Liu Chen fell silent for a moment at that, thinking it was actually forcing players to farm monsters just to progress. But he was thrilled rather than annoyed, since a glance at his backpack showed all 3 materials sitting at infinite quantity. He could barely even use them all up. He casually submitted the materials, confirmed he wanted to ignite the third Center Lake lighthouse, and the moment he did, it flared to life. 3 golden pillars of light shooting into the sky and converging above Mirror Lake as the white fog dispersed to reveal a massive crystal palace surfacing at the lake's center. The dungeon progress ticked to 3 out of 3. The final area opened, and a warning announced that the Mirror Lake Guard was about to awaken, with the current Jinghu pollution value sitting at 47%. Since it hadn't crossed 50%, the final boss wouldn't enter its strengthened state. Moments later, the Crystal Palace's gates slowly opened, and a tall figure emerged from within, clad in shattered silver armor, wielding a crystal spear, its featureless face nothing but a mirror-smooth silver mask. It was a LV8 rare grade boss called the Mirror Lake Guard, with 30,000 out of 30,000 GP, 260 physical attack, 260 magic attack, 150 physical defense, 150 magic defense, and a skill set of mirror spear thrust, water mirror reflection, lake center cage, and reflection doppelganger. Described as the final guardian of the Mirror Lake ruins, adept at reflecting damage and creating illusory copies of itself. A rare grade boss, an LV8 at that. A full 3 levels higher than the bloodthirsty Insect King. Liu Chen judged it would be a tough fight, especially with damage reflection, crowd control, and clones all in its kit. This kind of mechanic-heavy monster was the most treacherous, since carelessness meant bouncing yourself to death. Just then, the Mirror Lake Guard raised its crystal spear and swept the tip across the lake's surface, conjuring a translucent water mirror in front of itself as it activated water mirror reflection, which would reflect a portion of ranged damage for its duration. Liu Chen raised an eyebrow, wondering if this was a mechanic specifically built to counter archers, and held back from rushing his output, instead firing off an ordinary arrow to test it. The arrow struck the mirror for 43 damage, and a cold glint immediately rebounded off it straight toward his chest, slamming into his Wingardian shield and dealing 21 points of reflection damage. 50% reflection, he judged at once. Basic attacks were fine, but high-burst skills like Shadow Strike Arrow or Armor-Piercing Arrow would definitely hurt if reflected, and landing a critical weak point hit might well bounce him down to low health before the boss even died. Still, he didn't panic. The more complex the mechanic, the better the dungeon rewards tended to be. Just then, the Mirror Lake Guard rushed forward and thrust its crystal spear, unleashing Mirror Spear Thrust. The spear's shadow covering 10 meters in an instant and driving straight at Liu Chen's forehead. He immediately tore open a random teleport scroll and vanished, the spear stabbing empty air and splashing water where he'd stood a moment before as he reappeared off to the side. There, he noticed 3 extremely faint blue runes on the guard's back, and after studying them, realized they resembled the patterns on the nearby Center Lake lighthouses. The runes on its back corresponded to the 3 lighthouses. A prompt confirmed his discovery. 3 Jinghu runes were sustaining water mirror reflection, and he could use the corresponding rune materials to temporarily pollute them and disable the reflection. His eyes lit up. Where there's a mechanic, there's a weak point, and a field boss this early couldn't be too overpowered. The system specified that polluting the first rune required 10 mirror shadow fragments, the second required 10 polluted crystals, and the third required 5 stone statue cores. After a brief pause, Liu Chen submitted them directly, and all 3 runes were successfully polluted, reducing the Mirror Lake Guard's water mirror reflection effect by 100% for 60 seconds. Only 60 seconds per round, but it should be enough, he thought, drawing the Gale longbow. A boss without reflection damage was just a target now. He unleashed Shadow Strike Arrow, the arrow turning into a black shadow and striking the mirror core on the guard's chest for 2680 damage as a weak point hit, triggering the Shadow Strike Arrow trait for an additional critical hit of 5860, dropping a huge chunk of the boss's health bar in a single shot. Outside the palace, the lake water shook violently as the enraged Mirror Lake Guard drove its spear into the surface, activating Lake Center Cage. The water beneath Liu Chen's feet rose into a transparent prison, trapping him in place and restricting his movement for 8 seconds. With a notice that Wine Guardian's trait had already triggered and couldn't immunize him against this crowd control again, the guard charged at him with terrifying speed, and Liu Chen wondered aloud if it meant to finish him off while he was trapped. He glanced down at the water prison and pulled out a random teleport scroll, only for it to fail. He was in a spatial lockdown state that blocked random teleportation. Even teleportation sealed, he thought, raising an eyebrow at how insidious the skill was. An ordinary archer would have been dead for sure. As the guard closed in and thrust its spear at his chest, Liu Chen stayed calm and activated Wind Guardian, the spear driving into the shield and getting absorbed. 412 points, then another 398, while he stood in place, chugging potions to offset the damage. The instant the 8 seconds ended, and the water prison shattered, he activated Gale Step to pull himself backward and simultaneously unleashed a storm arrow rain across the front of the palace, the falling arrows stalling the guard's movements and chipping away at it for 980, then 1044, then a critical 2210, its health rapidly draining. Just as its health bar dropped below 70%, its body suddenly split into 3 as it activated Reflection Doppelganger. 2 reflection clones generated, each carrying 50% of the main body's attributes, and 3 Mirror Lake Guards raised their spears together. 3 mirror image thrusts locking onto Liu Chen almost simultaneously. He narrowed his gaze, keeping it fixed tight on the guard's true body. He couldn't afford to waste time on the mirror images. Hitting the real one was what mattered. But with 2 extra clones in the mix now, he didn't dare let his focus slip for even a second, because the slightest lapse would get him killed. He cycled through his skills one after another while retreating. Shadow Strike, Arrow, Armor-Piercing Arrow, Double Shot, Storm Arrow Rain, and the Mirror Lake Guard's main body health kept crashing. 60%, 50%, 40%. When it dropped below 30%, the guard tried to activate Water Mirror Reflection again, but Liu Chen had been waiting for exactly that. A prompt appeared asking whether he wished to keep submitting materials to contaminate the rune, and he confirmed. And the reflection condensation failed outright, the half-formed water mirror shattering on the spot. Its mechanism, he told it flatly, had already been cracked. There was no point. A follow-up Shadow Strike Arrow slammed into the core again, for a weakness critical of 6,420, dropping the guard to its last sliver of health. Then, unexpectedly, the guard dismissed its own clones and retreated toward the depths of the palace, spear in hand. Lu Chen blinked. A boss that could just run? A moment later, a huge, rare treasure chest appeared deep in the palace, and the guard planted itself in front of it, thrusting its spear at the chest's lock. A warning flashed. The Mirror Lake Guard was destroying the dungeon's treasure chest, and if it succeeded, the clear reward would drop. Lu Chen's expression turned cold instantly. It could hit him all it wanted, but touching his reward was another matter entirely, and it damn well deserved to die for that. He triggered Gale Step, his speed spiking, stacking every damage buff he had to its absolute ceiling, and fired a Shadow Strike arrow from behind that punched clean through the guard's mirror skull for a combined back attack, weakness, and critical hit totaling 7,888 damage. Its body seized up, then shattered in a burst of crystal fragments filling the sky. The system confirmed the kill. A level 8 Mirror Lake Guard, rare tier boss, defeated, granting 5,000 experience and 20 silver coins, plus 10 reputation. 2 level-ups followed back-to-back. First to level 6, then immediately to level 7. Each awarding +1 to all attributes, 5 free attribute points, 3 skill points, and 1 year of lifespan. 2 beams of golden light descended in succession, carrying him straight to level 7 in one breath. It felt fantastic. At the same moment, an announcement rang out across all of Novice Village. No. 9,527. The player Night God had achieved the first clear of the low-level dungeon Mirror Lake ruins, with a clear time of 37 minutes, 42 seconds, and a perfect evaluation. And the village's dungeon leaderboard had opened with Night God sitting at first place. Currently the only entry, showing Novice Village No. 9,527. Night God. Hyoxia, level 7, with second and third place still empty. Earning a reward of 30 reputation and 1 rare tier random dungeon treasure chest. The village plaza went dead silent, then erupted. People couldn't believe he'd already cleared a dungeon when the rest of them hadn't even figured out the wild areas yet. Wondering where this Mirror Lake ruins even was since it wasn't on the map. Marveling that he'd apparently soloed it again, and noting there was only one name on the whole leaderboard. Kwangdao stood in the crowd staring at the numbers, feeling sick. Night God was already level 7 while he himself was stuck at level 3. In comparison, he thought bitterly, really could be the death of a man. Before the shock could settle, another system prompt sounded, because the first dungeon in Novice Village No. 9,527 had been cleared. The trading house feature had unlocked early, letting players freely consign equipment, materials, skill books, and items within the village's safe zone, tradable in copper coins, silver coins, reputation vouchers, and lifespan crystals. The crowd erupted all over again. The trading house was open. People could finally buy gear. Someone begged for potions, since they were nearly bitten to death by wild dogs. Others clamored for skill books at any price. And more than one person wondered aloud what exactly a lifespan crystal was and whether you could really buy lifespan with it. It was dawning on the players that God's domain wasn't just about grinding monsters anymore. A real economy was taking shape, where equipment, skill books, even lifespan itself could become currency. Deep in the dungeon, Lu Chen looked over the trading house notice and perked up. It had come at just the right time, since resources were the one thing he had no shortage of at all. He could dump his Infinite Insect King, leather armor, hunter badges, and white-tier skill books onto the market right now. But doing that all at once would single-handedly crash the entire economy of Novice Village No. 9,527, and he wasn't about to be that reckless. Turning resources into cash was fine, but the pace needed control. Release small batches first to drive prices up. Then wait until players understood just how valuable equipment and potions were before harvesting them properly. With that decided, he walked up to the rare treasure chest and was asked whether he wished to open it. He did, and 3 beams of light shot skyward. The first was a blue ring, the Mirror Lake ring, rare tier, level requirement 7, granting plus 20 spirit, plus 15 agility, and plus 10% skill cooldown speed, with an additional effect giving a 10% chance to become immune to crowd control when affected by it. It entered his infinite backpack, quantity set to infinite. The second was a skill book, Mirror Shadow, Substitute, Rare Tier, with no class restriction. Its effect creating a Mirror Shadow substitute to absorb fatal damage in his place while randomly teleporting him 20 meters away on a 10-minute cooldown. This too entered the infinite backpack at infinite quantity. His eyes lit up. A life-saving skill this powerful with no class restriction, and it could be made infinite too. If this ever hit the trading house, players would go mad scrambling for it. The last item was the Mirror Lake Pass, a special item allowing whoever held it to teleport directly to the entrance of Mirror Lake Ruins, marked as a non-unique, duplicable dungeon pass type item. It too entered the infinite backpack at infinite quantity. Looking at the infinite supply of passes now sitting in his backpack, Liu Chen could barely keep the grin off his face. With this, he realized he could not only grind the dungeon endlessly himself, but sell admission to it as well. Players who couldn't find the entrance, buy his pass. Teams wanting to farm Mirror Lake Ruins, pay up first. It was almost too good. He also realized he now had infinite low-level dungeon positioning scrolls and could theoretically monopolize every one of these zones for himself. Though on reflection, hoarding territory didn't gain him much since all his currencies were already infinite. The only thing genuinely worth chasing now was lifespan, since you could never have too much of that. He tucked the pass away and opened the trading house interface, choosing to list the most unremarkable item first. 10 bottles of white-tier primary health potions, priced at 1 silver coin. It sold within seconds. He listed another batch. Sold instantly again. And another. Sold again. In the village plaza, players lost their minds over it, thrilled that 10 bottles of health potions cost just 1 silver coin, scrambling over who actually had a spare coin, with someone noting that Big Brother Kuangdao did, and others begging people not to snatch it all since their teammates were dying. Watching the potions vanish from the listings almost instantly, Liu Chen's smile grew wider. Next, he listed a rare-tier Insect King leather armor. But this time, instead of pricing it in silver coins, he set the price at 1 lifespan crystal. Instantly, the entire trading house interface highlighted the listing, announcing the first rare-tier armor to ever appear on the board. The Insect King leather armor, rare tier, and Novice Village no. 9,527 erupted once more. Liu Chen looked at the listing with a calm, measured gaze, curious to see just how much lifespan modern players would be willing to spend on a single piece of rare-tier equipment. Rare-grade defensive gear? Are there actually rare-grade pieces of equipment in the trading house right now? Word spread fast through the crowd as players read out the stats on the Insect King leather armor. Health plus 300, physical defense plus 35, agility plus 10, and beast damage reduction. With someone shouting that the stats were absurd, that their whole body was in white-tier gear and their health was barely over 100, while this single piece added 300 health outright, enough to let whoever wore it walk sideways through the early game. Players rushed toward the trading house interface, everyone's eyes going red as they stared at the listing. At this stage, the vast majority were still stuck in novice equipment, some not even able to piece together a full set of white-tier gear. So a rare-grade defensive item appearing for sale wasn't just a piece of equipment. It was capital to save your life. But once people saw the price, unease set back in. What was a lifespan crystal? And why wasn't it in their own trading house? The system prompt explained that players could condense their own lifespan into a lifespan crystal, which sparked outrage. Buy equipment with lifespan? Who would trade their life for gear? Then a player murmured quietly that wearing this piece could mean dying fewer times, and everyone fell silent, because it was true. Death in domain deducted lifespan. And Kuangdao had just lost 5 years in a single claw strike from a rare-grade boss, while ordinary players killed by wild monsters lost anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 years each time. If a piece of gear could save you from dying even once, wasn't a lifespan crystal worth it? Totally worth it. The players soon worked out the system's rules. A lifespan crystal was a special trading currency, condensed by spending 1 year of one's own lifespan, usable for trading or reabsorbed to restore 1 year of lifespan, with a cap of 10 crystals absorbable per day. As soon as the rule got out, the whole crowd went wild at the idea of trading lives for equipment. Back in the Novice Village Square, Kuangdao stared fixedly at the Insect King leather armor listing, breathing hard. He was a melee class, and though his grade talent boosted his attack, his defense was still lacking. If he could land this piece of gear, he swallowed hard. Was giving up a year to trade for rare-grade defensive gear worth it? Worth it. Totally worth it. Yet he hesitated, because this was his own life. Right then, a trading house notification popped up, announcing the Insect King leather armor had been sold, and the whole village erupted. Someone had actually bought it with a year of their lifespan. and players argued over who was ruthless enough to trade life for equipment while others shot back that a single year was nothing next to a piece of gear that could save you from dying a few extra times. Kuang Dao's face turned livid. He slammed a fist into the wooden pillar beside him, eyes red with regret, cursing that if he'd known, he'd have traded for it himself. Every rare piece sold now was one less available, and whoever grabbed it secured a real edge. A massive loss, he thought bitterly. Meanwhile, inside the Mirror Lake Ruins dungeon, a notification rang in Lu Chen's ears confirming that his Insect King leather armor had sold, that he'd gained 1 lifespan crystal, and that it had entered his infinite backpack with the quantity changed to infinite. He nearly pinched the bridge of his nose in disbelief, selling 1 piece of armor and getting infinite lifespan in return. Sure, a lifespan crystal was still far weaker than a lifespan fruit, but having it beat having nothing, and right now, he could steadily gain 60 years of lifespan every single day. 10 days would mean 600 years, 100 days would mean 6,000. His gaze grew increasingly wild as he began absorbing the crystals one after another, each one adding a year, until after absorbing 10 for the day, his lifespan stood at 168 years. He let out a slow breath. 168 years, and this was only the first day, with no telling what lay further down the road. Looking over his backpack, he laughed out loud, remarking that the economic system of domain seemed to have been punched clean through by him. Still, he didn't relist more Insect King leather armor in the trading house. Rare equipment could be sold, but not too much of it at once. Right now, there was only the 1 piece out there, and everyone would assume it was a rare drop from some lucky big shot. But if he dumped 100 pieces at once, it would genuinely crash the economy. Lu Chen stayed clear-headed about it. Infinite resources didn't mean blindly exposing them all. A truly high-level player didn't dump everything out at once, but controlled circulation carefully, creating scarcity so people would scramble for it. Afterward, he casually listed 10 groups of health potions, 10 groups of mana potions, and 5 groups of detoxification potions, doubling all the prices this time. 5 health potions for 1 silver coin, and even at that price they sold out instantly. Notification after notification confirming each batch of potions gone. Lu Chen smiled faintly, sensing the panic already spreading through the market. As long as people kept dying, potions would only grow more important. Prices would keep climbing, and people would keep paying up, especially those who just died once, who feared death more than anyone, and probably had dozens of potions crammed in their backpacks already. He thought back to how Kuang Dao had been slapped to death earlier, the memory still fresh. In front of the Novice Village trading house, plenty of players were already arguing. Someone demanding to know who'd snatched their health potion the moment they'd clicked in. Others begging the big shot to list more, insisting they had silver coins to spend. Still others pleading for archer equipment because they were losing patience with grinding monsters and wanted to power up fast. And some even offering to pay for skill books with their own lifespan, which drew disbelief from others who couldn't believe anyone would go that far. Though the counter-argument came quickly enough. Without skills, you couldn't kill monsters, and without killing monsters, you'd die sooner or later anyway. The atmosphere on the square grew increasingly fanatical as players began to realize that domain wasn't a place you could survive on guts alone. Resources were everything. Just then, a young man in silver-rimmed glasses stepped forward, going by the nickname Bai He and playing a priest class. Standing in the center of the crowd, he took a deep breath and called out for everyone's attention, explaining that now that the trading house was open and resource circulation had begun, they could no longer keep killing monsters as scattered individuals. He proposed everyone form fixed teams and distribute equipment, potions, and materials uniformly, with those who had money contributing money, those with equipment contributing equipment, and those with class advantages contributing effort, because otherwise they'd have no way to compete with top-tier players like Night God. His words drew a hush over a good portion of the crowd, until someone frowned and asked whether he meant to build a guild. Bai He shook his head and explained that there was no guild system in place yet, but that they could set up a temporary organization for the time being. The goal was straightforward enough. Gather resources, build a core team, push to reach level 10 as quickly as possible, and complete the first-class transfer, since whoever managed that first would secure a solid foothold in Novice Village No. 9,527. The mention of the first-class transfer made everyone perk up. Caught up in simple survival, they'd nearly forgotten it was even on the table. Kuang Dao was the first to step in, announcing he'd join. Citing his Agrade talent and the 50% bonus it gave his attack power, and offering that if warrior-class resources were prioritized for him, he could lead the team through rapid leveling. He glanced at him and nodded, agreeing, but made clear that all resources would be distributed strictly by contribution. This was God's domain, not real life, and volume alone wouldn't buy anyone the right to call the shots. Kwang Dao took it calmly enough, having already died once. Steady, careful growth was his priority now above anything else. Meanwhile, inside the Mirror Lake ruins, Lu Chen closed out the trading house interface and turned his attention to the system rewards waiting from his first clear. Alongside the reputation points, there was a rare-grade, random dungeon treasure chest he hadn't gotten around to opening yet. He cracked it open and pulled a rare-grade dungeon reset ticket, which let him reset the progress of any cleared low-level dungeon, up to 3 resets per dungeon per day. And since the ticket itself registered as infinite the moment it entered his bag, he nearly laughed out loud at what that meant. Infinite dungeon passes stacked on infinite reset tickets turned the Mirror Lake ruins into what was effectively his own personal resource mine, refreshable 4 times a day, each run capable of yielding experience, materials, equipment, skill books, and treasure chests. It was absurd, though he reasoned it wouldn't matter much to him personally in the long run. As his level climbed, the materials and rewards from a place like this would only get more low-grade relative to his needs, so there wasn't much point fixating on it. He kept opening chests anyway. One handed him a rare-grade Mirror Lake material pack, which also came back infinite once it landed in his bag. Another gave him 3 rare-grade equipment strengthening stones, and those 2 registered as infinite the instant they arrived. A third produced a fine-grade random class skill book, likewise infinite. With every chest, his excitement grew. Even the strengthening stones were unlimited, and that alone made this find enormously valuable, since equipment strengthening was one of the key ways players boosted their combat power, with stronger enhancements coming at the risk of failure and wasted stones along the way. That risk simply didn't apply to him. He reasoned that with an infinite supply, he could strengthen whatever piece he wanted without a second thought. Treat it like a numbers game and burn through 1,000,000 stones if it came to that. So he pulled out a stack of the strengthening stones and targeted his fine-grade Gale longbow. The first attempt succeeded, pushing it to +1 with physical attack up by 3. The next succeeded too, bringing it to +2. By +5, an additional effect kicked in, boosting attack speed by 5%. Watching his stone count stay completely unchanged in his bag, Lu Chen grinned and kept going, pushing the longbow all the way to +10. Physical attack up by 45, agility up by 10, attack speed up by 20%, and a new effect unlocked, Gale Arrow, giving his basic attacks a 10% chance to fire an additional wind blade dealing 50% physical damage. A fine-grade bow forced up to that level was already absurd, and it made him wonder. If this was what a fine-grade weapon could reach, what would a rare-grade one look like under the same treatment? It was a shame he didn't have a suitable rare-grade longbow on hand yet, but it didn't bother him much. He could always swap weapons and repeat the process later. With that, he turned and left the Crystal Palace, choosing to exit the dungeon entirely. A flash of white light later, he was standing back at the entrance to the Mirror Lake ruins, and no sooner had he steadied himself than an old voice reached him, remarking that he carried the aura of Mirror Lake on him. Turning to look, Lu Chen found an old man in a ragged cloak standing in the white mist by the lake, holding a bronze lamp whose dim blue light looked as though it might go out at any moment. Identified as Moore, the mysterious lake lamp merchant, a wandering trader who dealt only with players who'd achieved a perfect clear of the Mirror Lake ruins. A special merchant, then. The hidden reward for a perfect clear, Lu Chen realized. Moore looked him over and noted that he'd lit all 3 lighthouses and shattered the Mirror Lake Guard, and that, by their agreement, he could open a special trade for him just this once. A hidden shop appeared. An advanced guiding lake lamp, rare grade, priced at 50 silver coins and 5 reputation points. A rare grade Mirror Lake, secret key at 100 silver coins and 10 reputation points, which would open the hidden area of the ruins. And a broken class transfer clue of unknown grade, priced at 300 silver coins and 30 reputation points, described only as connected to a special Archer first-class transfer route. That last item caught his eye immediately. A special first-class transfer route was exactly the sort of thing worth securing, and at level 7, not far from level 10, the timing lined up. Checking his panel, he found that killing the Mirror Lake Guard had given him 10 reputation points and the first clear reward another 30, leaving him with 40 in total. Enough to afford it. He told Moore he wanted the broken clue. Moore studied him for a long moment and warned that the path it pointed toward wasn't an easy one. Not toward an ordinary hunter, but toward the forbidden hunter once swallowed by Mirror Lake. And asked if he was sure. Lu Chen didn't hesitate, and the purchase went through, costing him 300 silver coins and 30 reputation points. The clue entered his bag, flagged as a special quest item that couldn't be infinitely copied, granting him the class transfer clue for the Forbidden Hunter in Mirror Lake, with a note that once he reached level 10, he could bring it, together with the village chief's recommendation letter, to the class transfer hall in Blackstone City to attempt unlocking the special first-class transfer quest. The Forbidden Hunter, he thought, already sounded like a promising class. Right then, the trading house threw up another notification. A friend request from a player named Bai He, with a message explaining that they represented the temporary alliance forming in Novice Village No. 9527 and wanted to purchase a batch of potions and equipment from him, price negotiable. Lu Chen's mouth curled slightly at that. A temporary alliance, already forming this early. Interesting, and not unwelcome either. Individual players only had so much money to spend, but an organization's coffers ran a good deal deeper. Still, he figured, whether he'd sell depended on whether they had anything worth his while in return. He accepted the friend request and typed back, asking what price they were offering for his goods. A friend request came in from a player named Bai He, claiming to represent a temporary alliance from Novice Village No. 9527 and wanting to buy potions and equipment off Lu Chen at a negotiable price. Curious about the idea of a temporary alliance, Lu Chen accepted, and Bai He wasted no time addressing him as Big Shot Night God and diving into the pitch. The mortality rate among players in the Novice Village was brutal, and if everyone kept fighting alone, plenty of them wouldn't even make it to level 3. So he'd formed an alliance willing to buy potions, equipment, and skill books off Night God at a high price. Lu Chen read it calmly, privately unimpressed by high price, and simply asked how high, noting he wasn't exactly short on silver coins. On the other end, Bai He went quiet. It was only the first day, and while everyone else was scraping for copper coins, Night God was already dismissing silver as beneath him. Bai He managed a bitter smile and asked what he did want instead. Lu Chen checked his own reputation points and found he only had 10 left after buying fragmented class advancement clues earlier. Reputation couldn't be duplicated through the backpack, making it one of the scarcest resources around since the first class advancement. Hidden shops, high-level NPC favorability, and main city quests would all likely hinge on it. So he named his price: reputation vouchers, hidden quest clues, intelligence of all kinds, and lifespan. That last word made Bai He's fingers pause. Lifespan was the single most sensitive currency for any player, and he pushed back that it was too much to ask of ordinary players. Lu Chen only replied that scarcity was exactly what made it valuable, a line that left Bai He speechless at how nakedly true it was. The scarcer something was, the more it was worth, and the more painful to give up, the more valuable still. Divine Realm really was nothing but a naked iron jungle. Lu Chen then laid out his price list. 100 bottles of primary health potion for 1 lifespan crystal, 100 bottles of primary mana potion for 1 lifespan crystal, 50 bottles of primary detoxification potion for 1 lifespan crystal, 1 copy of a common grade random class skill book for 1 lifespan crystal, 1 piece of fine grade equipment for 2 lifespan crystals, and rare grade armor starting at 10 lifespan crystals. Bai He's eyes narrowed, reading the numbers, but after a pause, he agreed they could buy a batch of potions first, though lifespan crystals would have to come from players condensing them voluntarily. He couldn't force anyone. Lu Chen agreed and proposed a first batch: 500 bottles of health potions, 500 of mana potions, and 100 of detoxification potions. Total price 11 lifespan crystals, with 10 return scrolls thrown in as a bonus. The mention of return scrolls, even more valuable than the potions themselves, lit Bai He up, and he agreed on the spot. Back in the plaza of Novice Village No. 9527, Bai He closed the chat and turned to face the hundreds of players gathered there. Kuang Dao, standing impatiently at the front, asking how the negotiation had gone. Bai He calmly confirmed it was settled. 500 health potions, 500 mana potions, 100 detoxification potions, plus 10 return scrolls as a bonus. And the crowd erupted at the numbers, amazed at the scale of it all and wondering just how many resources this night god actually had. Even Kuang Dao was briefly stunned. He'd assumed whatever Night God had was just scattered individual drops, not enough to hand over 1,000+ bottles in one move. Clearly, this wasn't the kind of reserve an ordinary player carried. Then he named the cost. 11 lifespan crystals. And the crowd went silent at the mention of lifespan, expressions shifting all around. He made clear he wasn't forcing anyone. Those willing to condense lifespan crystals could get potions and return scrolls first and join the core team with priority, while those unwilling could stay peripheral, earning contributions by fighting monsters and gathering quest clues. But he wanted it understood plainly that Divine Realm wasn't reality, and nobody got to enjoy resources for free. A pale-faced young man stepped forward first, offering 1 crystal, admitting he'd just died and lost 2 years of lifespan, reasoning that if he'd had potions, he wouldn't have died at all, and that giving up 1 year now beat losing 2 or 3 more later. He condensed a lifespan crystal on the spot, the pale white shard appearing in his palm. Others followed one after another, some just offering a crystal, some asking for a spot on the core team in exchange, until all 11 crystals had been gathered. He placed them into the trade window, and Lu Chen completed the exchange instantly, receiving 11 lifespan crystals into his backpack, the quantity still showing as infinite. He took it in with total ease. The trade meant nothing material to him, since his supply of lifespan crystals had already become infinite the moment he obtained his first one. The whole exchange was purely strategic, laying groundwork for the future. No matter how powerful one person became, a day still only had 24 hours, and with a world as vast as Divine Realm, building out an intelligence network mattered more than anything else. Once the trade was done, he distributed the potions among the crowd. Kuang Dao received 10 bottles of health potions, 10 of mana potions, and 1 return scroll, staring at the scroll in his hand with a complicated look before walking over to ask whether any equipment had been bought. He shook his head. Night God wasn't selling equipment in batches for now, which soured Kuang Dao's mood further, his thoughts drifting back to that piece of Insect King leather armor he still wanted. Reading exactly what was on his mind, he added flatly that the starting price for rare-grade armor was 10 lifespan crystals. Kuang Dao's pupils shrank. 10 crystals meant 10 years of lifespan, and that very piece of Insect King leather armor had only sold for 1 lifespan crystal on the auction house earlier. Now it had jumped to 10 in the blink of an eye. He muttered bitterly that night, God might as well just go rob people outright. He only glanced at him and said nothing. Lu Chen left the Mirror Lake entrance and made his way back toward the novice village, though he didn't go straight in. Instead, he found a quiet stretch of open ground at the edge of Mantis Slope, since it was time to organize his combat power properly. Opening his skill panel, he saw that all his white tier skills had already reached level 10, and his rare tier skills had been pushed to level 10 as well. Still not enough, he thought. He could always use more skills, since every skill carried a vulnerable gap after use that needed covering. So he pulled out a stack of random class skill books, rare tier, and started working through them. The first gave him the archer skill Concussive Arrow, which fired a shot dealing 150% physical damage with a 30% chance to stun for 1 second. A solid crowd control option. The next gave him Mark Prey, which marked a target so that all damage dealt to it over the next 30 seconds was increased by 15%. The one after that gave him Trap Placement, letting him deploy a simple binding trap that, once triggered, slowed, and briefly rooted the target. This one, he thought, was fantastic. Combined with trap materials, it opened up all sorts of tricks, and while ordinary archers had to burn through materials to set traps, that was never a concern for him. It would come in handy for point defense fights, contested dungeon entrances, or player sieges down the line. He kept cracking open skill books, converting every duplicate into proficiency, and before long all 3 rare tier skills were maxed to level 10. Concussive Arrow now dealing 240% physical damage with an 80% chance to stun for 2 seconds. Mark Prey now marking a target for 60 seconds with damage increased by 35%, and Trap Placement now able to deploy up to 20 binding traps at once, each trigger causing a 3-second root and a 50% slow. Satisfied, he nodded. His skill system was rounding into shape. For single target burst, he had Shadow Strike Arrow. For area damage, Storm Arrow Rain. For defense, Wind Guardian and Mirror Shadow Substitute. For crowd control, Concussive Arrow and Trap Placement. For damage amplification, Mark Prey and Hunter's Potion. He was missing neither mobility nor recovery. All his own hard work, he told himself with a laugh. His combat system had truly come together. The one thing he still lacked was a rare tier longbow. Looking down at the Gale longbow in his hand, reinforced to +10, its stats were already strong, but it was still only fine tier, and he'd have to replace it eventually. The Mirror Lake ruins had dropped good gear, but it leaned toward mirror type, magic, and control equipment rather than bows. If he wanted a rare tier bow, he'd probably need to chase down Archer-exclusive quests or bosses, and that path was slow with heavy randomness. Then it hit him. He could just go find a blacksmith and have one crafted. He had materials in abundance and money in abundance, so why not simply commission a rare tier longbow directly? With that thought, he got up and headed back to the village. As he walked in, people were still out haggling over lifespan crystals for real-world money. Someone offering to buy one for $1 million with a real-world transfer, fair to old and young alike, while others scoffed that there was no guarantee he'd honor the debt once he logged out of Divine Domain, and still others argued back and forth over whether real money would even still matter, since they'd all return to reality eventually and need it there. Though someone else countered that lifespan itself might simply run out one day. The argument raged on around him, but the moment Lu Chen pushed through the crowd toward the blacksmith shop, a knot of people swarmed him, calling out that it was Night God, the big boss himself, back in the village. Some offering a lifespan crystal for any equipment he'd sell, others begging to be carried while leveling and offering to sign a real-world contract for it. He ignored all of them and walked straight into the blacksmith shop. Seeing him enter, the blacksmith Baru set down his hammer, remarking that the young descender carried a heavy smell of blood on him. It seemed he'd slain something truly powerful. Lu Chen laid out a bloodthirsty insect king core, followed by mirror shadow fragments, polluted crystals, and a stone statue core, and asked flatly whether these materials could be forged into a bow. Baru's calm expression cracked, his eyes going wide as saucers. A bloodthirsty insect king core? Mirror shadow fragments from the Mirror Lake ruins? Polluted crystals? These were extraordinarily rare materials. How had he even gotten them? Lu Chen brushed the question aside and just asked again whether it was possible. Baru admitted it was, but warned that fusing materials with such different attributes together would carry a serious risk of failure. Lu Chen said it didn't matter, just keep crafting until it worked. Baru wasn't sure he'd heard that right. Fail until it succeeds. What kind of reckless talk was that? He asked, low-voiced, whether Lu Chen really had that many materials to spare, and Lu Chen told him it wasn't his concern. Just craft it, and he'd pay for materials and labor as usual. Baru asked once more if he was sure, and Lu Chen said nothing further, simply setting the materials and silver coins down on the counter and telling him to begin. Watching Lu Chen not so much as blink, Baru privately decided the man was insane, but picked up his hammer anyway and lit the forge fire. The materials melted down, and the prototype of a longbow woven from blood red and silver slowly took shape in the flames. But the forging failed, all the materials destroyed. Before Baru could even open his mouth to offer comfort, Lu Chen had already laid out another full set of materials and told him to continue. It failed again and again. After 5 straight failures, sweat had beaded on Baru's forehead. Not from exertion, but from sheer fright at what he was witnessing. Other people who obtained even a single bloodthirsty insect king core would want to enshrine it. And here was this young man burning through a full set with every failure without so much as a flinch. On the 7th attempt, the forge fire suddenly turned silver shot through with blood red, the longbow's prototype fully forming this time, and a crisp chime rang out. The forging had succeeded. Lu Chen had obtained a rare tier weapon, the Mirror Bloodhunter bow, which entered his inventory with its quantity immediately changed to infinite. His eyes lit up. It had worked. The Mirror Bloodhunter bow, rare tier, carried an equipment level requirement of 7, granting plus 85 physical attack, plus 25 agility, plus 8% critical hit rate, and plus 15% attack speed, along with 2 additional effects. Blood Hunt, increasing damage by 20% against targets below 30% health, and Mirror Shadow Pursuit, giving a 10% chance on every weak point hit to generate an extra Mirror Shadow arrow dealing 80% physical damage. Not only was the raw attack power a massive jump, it came with 2 bonus effects on top. Far better than the Gale longbow he'd been using, but he wasn't finished. He pulled out a rare tier equipment strengthening stone and began reinforcing it, pushing it up level by level until it reached plus 10, where the strengthening succeeded fully. At plus 10, the Mirror Bloodhunter bow now granted plus 160 physical attack, plus 45 agility, plus 15% critical hit rate, and plus 30% attack speed, with Blood Hunt enhanced increasing damage by 35% against targets below 40% health. Mirror Shadow Pursuit enhanced, raising the trigger chance to 25% and the Mirror Shadow arrows damage to 120% physical damage, and a new third effect, Blood Mirror Strike, guaranteeing that every 60 seconds his next weak point attack would automatically trigger Mirror Shadow Pursuit. Baru stared at the fully reinforced rare tier longbow, utterly speechless, and after a long pause finally managed to ask the young man whether his family happened to be in the mining business. Just as Lu Chen was preparing to leave the blacksmith shop, Baru suddenly stopped him, looking somewhat sheepish, and said he had a request he hoped Lu Chen wouldn't mind troubling himself with. Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, and the next second a prompt rang out in his mind, informing him he'd gained the recognition of the blacksmith Baru, that Baru's favorability had risen by 20, and that he'd triggered a hidden commission called the Blacksmith's Ambition. Baru wanted to craft a rare-grade piece of equipment to prove his skills and needed several rare-grade materials submitted, with the reward being 15 prestige, special forging permissions at the blacksmith shop, and one unknown blueprint. Lu Chen's eyes lit up at the mention of prestige, since after buying the class advancement clues earlier, he only had 10 points left, and he hadn't expected that forging a weapon could trigger a blacksmith's hidden commission at all. This was perfect. He asked what he could do to help, and Baru explained, after a pause, that he'd noticed the materials Lu Chen had pulled out earlier were far too rare not to belong to a powerful descender, and that he wanted to trouble him to gather a set of materials so he could finally try crafting something that was truly his own. Of course, not for free. When Lu Chen asked what materials were needed, Baru said, in a deep voice, that he required 1 bloodthirsty dog king core, 10 mirror shadow fragments, 10 polluted crystals, and 10 stone statue cores. Feeling a little guilty even as he said it, since in an ordinary player's hands this batch would be enough to bankrupt an entire team, and many players hadn't even heard of half these items. But Lu Chen just nodded calmly and agreed, casually pulling out 1 bloodthirsty dog king core of rare grade, 10 mirror shadow fragments of rare grade, 10 polluted crystals of rare grade, and 10 stone statue cores of fine grade. Baru stared at the materials laid out on the table, completely numb with disbelief, stammering that Lu Chen had simply pulled them all out on the spot as if they cost nothing. He'd been bracing himself to ask Lu Chen to make another trip for them, and here they all were already. He felt, in that moment, as if his 30 years of forging iron had been for nothing. Recovering himself, Baru took a deep breath and asked the warrior to wait a moment while he went to craft the piece. More than 10 minutes later, a burst of light exploded from within the blacksmith shop, and a system prompt rang in Lu Chen's ears confirming that the hidden commission, the blacksmith's ambition, had been completed, granting him 15 prestige, the special forging permissions, and a blueprint for the blood mirror quiver of rare grade. Lu Chen's eyes lit up. A blueprint, and one that came at exactly the right time. The blueprint specified it was an offhand equipment type, requiring 5 mirror shadow fragments, 10 bloodthirsty dog bones, 3 polluted crystals, and 50 silver coins to craft, with an effect that gave a chance to inflict bleeding on weak point hits and increase the wearer's arrow flight speed. Offhand equipment, and a quiver at that. Archers rarely found suitable offhand gear this early, making the blueprint extremely valuable. And the most crucial part was that Lu Chen already had every material needed. He looked over at Baru, who was sweating profusely but grinning with excitement as he declared it done. Pulling a blood-silver quiver from the furnace, its surface etched with mirror-like patterns and its edges glowing with a dark red luster. The finished item was the blood mirror quiver of rare grade, equipment level 7, granting agility plus 20, critical rate plus 5%, arrow flight speed plus 20%, and an additional blood mark effect that caused targets hit at a weak point to bleed for 20% physical attack damage per second over 5 seconds. Overjoyed, Baru thanked Lu Chen for helping him fulfill his dream and handed the equipment over outright, saying he never could have crafted it without the materials Lu Chen had supplied. A notification confirmed Lu Chen had obtained the blood mirror quiver of rare grade. Its quantity immediately changed to infinite in his inventory, and he equipped it on the spot, activating his archer offhand slot and boosting his overall output another notch. Baru watched him equip it, smiling proudly and asking whether his craftsmanship had rusted at all. Lu Chen nodded and said it wasn't bad, which only widened Baru's grin. until he saw Lu Chen pull out another pile of rare-grade equipment enhancement stones, at which point his smile stiffened as he asked if Lu Chen was really enhancing it further. Lu Chen simply confirmed he was, prompting Baru to mutter under his breath about young people abandoning martial virtue these days, though Lu Chen said nothing and just set the stones on the counter. A moment later, the blood mirror quiver had been enhanced to +10, its stats now agility +40, critical rate +10%, arrow flight speed +40%. With the blood mark effect upgraded so weak point hits caused an enhanced bleed of 35% physical attack damage per second over 6 seconds. Plus a new additional effect called Stalking Quiver that increased attack speed by 30% after each kill. Lu Chen nodded with satisfaction, taking stock of his full equipment now. The Mirror Bloodhunter Bow at +10, the Blood Mirror Quiver at +10, his Insect King leather armor, the Mirror Lake Ring, and the Hunter's Badge, combined with a full set of max-level skills and infinite potions and teleport scrolls. His combat power now thoroughly outclassed anything else in the Novice Village stage. He opened his character panel to check. Nickname Night God, level 7, lifespan 168 years, class Archer, prestige 25, HP 850 out of 850, MP 460 out of 460, physical attack 328, agility 126, critical rate 40%, and skill cooldown speed reduced by 10%. Any other player seeing this panel would probably question their own life choices. An ordinary LV7 archer with 80 points of physical attack was already considered exceptionally strong, and Lu Chen had 328, on top of fully leveled skills and every kind of infinite resource imaginable. Deciding it was time to level up, he put away his panel and walked out of the blacksmith shop, and the players outside instantly quieted down, staring at the blood-silver longbow on his back and the dark red glowing quiver at his waist. Equipment glow effects couldn't be hidden. Murmurs broke out asking what bow that was, whether it was rare grade, whether the quiver was equipment too. Disbelief that he already had offhand gear when others hadn't even finished their main weapons, and speculation about what it meant to be the #1 on the leaderboard. Mad Blade stared fixedly at Lu Chen's equipment, his eyes turning red at how dazzling the bow was. At that moment he also stepped forward, his expression complicated, and addressed Lu Chen by his nickname, Night God. Lu Chen asked if something was the matter, and he explained that the potions from before had proven very useful. The Alliance's first batch of teams was already stably farming the LV3 Wild Dog area, and they wanted to purchase a second batch of resources. Lu Chen said flatly that the price would be doubled, catching He and the surrounding players off guard. When He asked why, Lu Chen calmly explained that the first cooperation had come with a discount, and the second would be at the regular price, a line that left He with nothing more to say. After a moment of silence, He asked whether they could offset the price with information instead, and Lu Chen's eyes flickered with interest as he asked what kind. He explained that some of their players had found an abandoned mine entrance that no one dared enter yet, near which sat a type of black ore identified as fine-grade material. Lu Chen's expression finally shifted. He didn't yet have infinite quantities of ore-type materials, and getting even one piece would change things considerably. He asked for a sample, and he immediately handed over a piece of black ore from his backpack, identified as black-veined iron ore of fine grade, a special ore suited for forging weapons and heavy armor with a faint dark attribute inside. The moment it entered Lu Chen's inventory, its quantity changed to infinite. His mouth curled up imperceptibly. Another resource line secured. Infinite ore, meaning forging, would be far more convenient going forward. He put the ore away and told He this could offset the price, and He breathed a sigh of relief. Until Lu Chen added that it would only offset it once, and he wouldn't accept similar materials again in the future. He's pupils shrank slightly, but he'd already gotten a rough read on Night God's preferences by now, so he simply nodded and didn't press further. Afterward, Lu Chen sent over the new trading terms for the second batch of resources. 1,000 bottles of HP potions, 1,000 bottles of MP potions, 200 bottles of detox potions, 200 bottles of hemostatic potions, and 20 town portal scrolls, priced at 20 lifespan crystals plus 3 fine-grade or higher items or clues he hadn't seen before. He looked over the list, his heart shaking at the sheer scale of what Night God had on hand. 1,000 bottles each of HP and MP potions alone was enough to support dozens of teams farming continuously. Gritting his teeth, He agreed to the deal, and the two of them completed the transaction, with Lu Chen receiving 20 lifespan crystals, 1 amethyst of fine grade, and 1 sky insect grass of fine grade. All their quantities immediately changed to infinite. Happy cooperation, indeed. After leaving the novice village, Lu Chen made his way back to the entrance of the Mirror Lake ruins, pulled out a dungeon reset ticket, and reset the instance, leaving himself 2 resets for the day. He followed it up with a Mirror Lake pass and stepped back into the dungeon. And this time was nothing like the first. Back then, he'd had to feel out the mechanics as he went, leaning on the guiding lake lamp just to find his way. This time, he was speedrunning it. The moment he entered, he raised the Mirror Blood Hunter bow and put an arrow straight into the lake surface. Blood silver light exploded across the water, and the handful of wraiths that had just surfaced didn't even get the chance to scream before the mirror shadow pursuit triggered by that single arrow tore through them, killing a level 5 drowned wraith outright and refunding the cooldown on Storm Arrow Rain. Lu Chen activated Gale Step and, with total calm, told himself it was time to start harvesting. 15 minutes later, he killed the Mirror Lake Guard, a rare grade boss, and the rewards rolled in. 5,000 experience, 10 reputation, a level up to LV8, and a year added to his lifespan. Another 15 minutes after that, he burned a reset ticket and cleared it again, netting the same 5,000 experience, 10 reputation, a jump to LV9, and another year of lifespan. On his final run-through, he simply flattened everything in his path, wiping out whole patches of monsters with single arrows, and killed the Mirror Lake Guard a 3rd time. 5,000 experience, 10 reputation, and this time a jump to LV10, along with all attributes up by 1, 5 free attribute points, 3 skill points, and another year of lifespan. His total lifespan now stood at 169 years, his reputation at 55, and a notice informed him he'd hit the level cap for the novice stage. Any experience gained from here on would simply be stored until he completed the first-class transfer quest to break past the limit. At the same moment, the novice village 9,527 leaderboard refreshed, placing Night God at rank 1 with level 10, and the entire village went dead silent for a beat before erupting. Night God had hit max level for the novice stage. He was about to go do his first-class transfer, and here most of them were still stuck at level 3 or 4 wondering how they were even supposed to keep up. Inside the ruins, Lu Chen stood in front of the Crystal Palace, put his longbow away, and allowed himself a slow smile as he looked over his backpack. The novice village stage, he thought, was nearly finished. Next stop was Blackstone City and the special first-class transfer. He exited the dungeon and reappeared at the Mirror Lake entrance in a flash of white light, finding Moore, the mysterious lake lamp merchant, still standing there in the fog. Moore's clouded eyes shifted as he noted that the aura of Mirror Lake clinging to Lu Chen had grown stronger, and though Lu Chen only smiled without answering, Moore went on to say that since he'd reached LV10, he had something to offer that might help him, and held out a palm-sized bronze lamp, an incomplete lake lamp, asking if he wanted to accept it. It struck Lu Chen as odd, since this was the first time an NPC had simply given him something for free, but he accepted anyway. The lamp entered his bag, flagged as a special token that couldn't be duplicated, described as an old lamp Moore himself had once used in his youth. Incomplete, but still capable of guiding certain hidden paths, and with a note that carrying it into Blackstone City might lead him to people connected to Mirror Lake. It was, he realized, yet another hidden thread. Proof that the ruins weren't just a dungeon, but tied into the main city's storyline to come. He thanked Moore, who waved him off, remarking that he hadn't seen a descender this strong in years. A comment that briefly caught Lu Chen off guard. Before he could respond, Moore added that the class transfer hall in Blackstone City housed many class instructors, and that if he truly meant to pursue the forbidden hunter tied to Mirror Lake, he should seek out a woman named Selena. Once a hunter herself, whose shadow, Moore said, remained trapped within the lake to this day. Lu Chen filed the name away and thanked him again. Moore told him not to bother thanking him. If he really walked that path, he might come to hate Moore for it later. Lu Chen just smiled and said he wouldn't. The only thing he'd hate was the rewards not being enough. Moore had nothing left to say to that. Lu Chen pulled out a town recall scroll, and 10 seconds later the white light dropped him back into Novice Village No. 9,527. Which was by then boiling over with excitement. Night God's name sat at the very top of the level leaderboard, with Bei He in second at LV5, Kwang Dao in 3rd at LV4, and everyone from 4th to 10th hovering around LV4 as well. It was a cliff-edge lead, and the players weren't shy about saying so. Wondering how anyone leveled that fast when they'd worked all afternoon just to hit level 3. Speculating it had to be some dungeon with absurd experience rates. Complaining that nobody could even find its entrance. And half joking that night God might not even be human but some kind of plant for the game itself. Still, when Lu Chen actually walked into the square, the crowd parted for him without thinking. He stepped up first, congratulating him on reaching max level, and Lu Chen sized him up immediately. Knowing this guy always had an angle, and asked flatly what he was here for. He took a breath and said he wanted to buy a Mirror Lake pass. Lu Chen asked if they meant to enter the ruins themselves, thought it over, and said he could sell passes, but only 3 of them, at 10 lifespan crystals apiece. His expression froze, and the players nearby audibly gasped. 10 lifespan crystals meant 10 years of life, an outrageous price for a single dungeon ticket. Lu Chen stayed indifferent about it, telling them they were free to pass on the offer, that he alone knew the entrance and held the only passes, that he'd already claimed the dungeon's first clear rewards for himself. But the materials, experience, and boss drops still waiting inside would, if farmed properly, easily outweigh the cost of 10 lifespan crystals. He went quiet, weighing it. A stable dungeon like that promised real profit if it could be cleared, and a pass meant more than just a single run. And having already benefited from 2 prior deals with Lu Chen, the Alliance knew what dealing with him could yield. Gritting his teeth, he finally asked whether they could offset the price with intel instead. Lu Chen's gaze shifted, and he told He to speak. He lowered his voice, explaining that the Alliance's players had found a gathering point south of the novice village where a fine-grade herb called moonlight grass grew. The apothecary had appraised it as useful for mana recovery potions, and possibly connected to mental attribute potions too. Interested, since he didn't have the item himself, Lu Chen asked to see a sample, and he handed over a light blue herb. The system flagged it as fine-grade moonlight grass, an herb that absorbed moonlight and could be used to refine mana and mental potions, and it entered his backpack at infinite quantity. Pleased, Lu Chen ruled that this intelligence alone could only offset half the price of 1 pass token. 5 lifespan crystals. And he, though it still stung, was relieved it wasn't worse. He had more. In the abandoned mine cave east of the village, alongside black-veined iron ore, there was a fine-grade mine cave boss guarding an ore vein deep inside, one that didn't leave the cave on its own but was confirmed to be sitting on rare-grade ore. That got Lu Chen's attention. Black-veined iron ore was only fine-grade, and already useful for forging, so rare-grade ore would make future equipment crafting far more convenient. Calling the intelligence valuable, he set his prices. The first pass token for 5 lifespan crystals, the second and third at the original price of 10 each, and on top of that, he offered to sell a simplified guide. His eyes lit up, asking the price, and Lu Chen named 20 lifespan crystals, explaining the guide would cover the 3 lighthouse mechanism, how to use the lake lamps, the silver key door mechanism, and how to crack the final boss's reflection damage. His breath caught at the price. Outrageous, but the guide was worth even more than the pass token itself, since without it, the dungeon would be a blind walk into death. He asked for time to gather the crystals, and Lu Chen agreed, though he warned that prices would rise once he left the novice village. Grumbling about how painful that was, he promised he'd be back and turned to rally the Alliance's players, who began condensing lifespan crystals one after another. Before long he returned with 25 lifespan crystals, asking to buy the first pass token and the simplified guide right away. Lu Chen agreed, adding one condition. Once the rare ore vein was cleared, he wanted it handed over to him, since he had no interest in wasting time going to look at it himself and would rather let Baihe's group handle it. He agreed readily, and Lu Chen placed a Mirror Lake pass token into the trade column. The transaction completed, netting him 25 more lifespan crystals, still infinite in his backpack. He then mailed over the guide, brief but complete with every key point, and Baihe's expression turned solemn reading it, realizing the dungeon's real difficulty wasn't the monsters but resource drain and mechanics. No wonder Night God could farm it so fast. Lu Chen didn't explain further. He thanked him sincerely, and Lu Chen brushed it off as just a transaction. Though he promised the Alliance would prioritize contacting him with any new materials or clues they found. Just as Lu Chen was about to leave, another friend request came in. This one from a player called Mad Blade, asking to buy the Insect King, leather armor, and name a price. Lu Chen found it almost funny that the same person who'd once tried to snatch his monsters now had the nerve to come trade with him, and simply refused, closing the chat. Right then, a system prompt announced he'd reached level 10 and met the basic conditions to leave the novice village, directing him to the village chief to activate the teleportation array to Blackstone City. He headed straight for the village chief's cabin, where village chief Horn was already waiting, greeting him as Descender and remarking, with a mix of relief and solemnity, that Lu Chen had hit level 10 faster than expected. The novice village clearly couldn't hold him any longer. Lu Chen confirmed he was heading to Blackstone City, and the chief nodded approvingly before pointing to the teleportation array behind him, noting that using it would cost 1,000 silver coins. Without hesitation, Lu Chen paid the full sum the moment it was requested, visibly startling the village chief and sending the surrounding players into an uproar, amazed that anyone could pay 1,000 silver coins without blinking, joking bitterly that leveling to 10 meant nothing without the coin to match, some despairing they'd be stuck in the novice village forever. Everyone watched Lu Chen standing on the teleportation array with open envy, wondering just how far ahead Night God would be by the time they finally reached the main city themselves. The village chief stepped closer, expressing genuine gratitude for Lu Chen's contributions to Novice Village No. 9,527, but warned him to be careful in the main city. He'd be facing top players from other novice villages, along with indigenous nobles, professional guilds, chambers of commerce, and mercenary groups, none of whom should be underestimated. Lu Chen simply smiled and thanked him, and the chief activated the array. A massive blue pillar of light shot into the sky, as the village announcement declared that Night God had successfully activated the teleportation array to Blackstone City, opening the main city channel for any player who'd reached level 10 and could pay the 1,000-coin fee. The village erupted again as Lu Chen looked back one last time before vanishing from sight, and moments later a regional announcement rang out declaring him the very first player from Novice Village No. 9,527 to reach the main city, rewarding him with 50 prestige points and the title Novice Village Pioneer, bringing his current prestige to 105. The village exploded with reactions. Disbelief that there were bonuses just for entering the main city, awe at the title reward, grumbling that everyone else was still stuck, grinding in the novice village while Night God had already claimed his first promotion. As the teleportation light faded, Lu Chen opened his eyes to a magnificent bell chime and found himself standing before the towering walls of Blackstone City, guarded by NPC soldiers far more imposing than anything back in the novice village, with the city's name etched boldly above the gate. The sheer scale of it took his breath away. Even years of online gaming hadn't prepared him for the crushing sense of pressure he felt standing there in person. As he gathered himself, surprised voices rose around him. Other players noting a newcomer had just teleported in from some village they'd never heard of. No. 9,527. And marveling that he already bore the special effects of a rare grade +10 weapon despite just arriving, wondering just how loaded this newcomer really was. Lu Chen looked up at Blackstone City, the corners of his mouth slowly curling into a smile. The players who'd managed to reach the main city this quickly were, for the most part, the top talents of their respective novice villages. But when Lu Chen showed up, they all paled by comparison. Just the glow radiating off the quiver and hunting bow on his back was enough to make people squint. Whispers spread instantly. Was that a rare grade +10 weapon? Which novice village was he even from? Novice Village No. 9,527. Never heard of it. Had he really come alone? An archer reaching the main city solo was practically a joke. Lu Chen ignored all of it and pulled up the regional leaderboard, where the Blackstone City level rankings showed Flame Young Master in first at level 10 as a mage, Taishan second at level 10 as a shield warrior, Night God third at level 10 as an archer, Balu fourth at level 10 as a priest, and Qianren fifth at level 10 as an assassin. There weren't many level 10 players in Blackstone City yet, but anyone who'd made this list was clearly no pushover, and Lu Chen had landed in third place the moment he arrived. Though he knew this ranking was really just a rough sort, based on arrival time and accumulated experience, and the real gap between players wouldn't show itself until after the first-class transfer. While he was still looking over the board, a playful voice called out from beside him, asking if he was Night God, the number 1 of Novice Village No. 9,527. He turned to find a young man in a fiery red robe holding a ruby-set staff, trailed by 4 other players. Inspection identified him as Flame Young Master, level 10, Mage, currently the top-ranked player on the Blackstone City leaderboard. Flame Young Master complimented the gear and asked if it was for sale. Lu Chen said flatly it wasn't. Flame Young Master laughed and told him not to be so quick to refuse, revealing that in reality he was the heir of the Tianheng group and offered 100 million for the bow. The number sent a ripple through the surrounding crowd. Even after Domain's descent, 100 million was still more than an ordinary person could earn across several lifetimes. And more than a few players' expressions shifted at the thought of a game weapon selling for that much. Who wouldn't be tempted? But Lu Chen just looked at him evenly and asked how many lifespan crystals 100 million could actually buy. The smile on Flame Young Master's face stiffened. 100 million sounded like a fortune, but outside of Domain, it wasn't even worth toilet paper. His eyes narrowed as he told Lu Chen he was being quite arrogant. Lu Chen replied just as flatly that he was quite poor. The crowd nearly burst out laughing. Flame Young Master had never been embarrassed like this before, not since arriving in Domain and using his C-rank fire-type talent and his team's backing to be first into Blackstone City, and now some stranger was calling him poor. He demanded to know if Lu Chen understood who he was talking to, and Lu Chen just shrugged and asked whether he was talking to a dog. Flame Young Master started to point at him, furious. But by then Lu Chen had already torn open a random teleport scroll and vanished. Flame Young Master cursed under his breath. If this hadn't been the safe zone of Blackstone City, where players couldn't attack each other freely, he would have loved nothing more than to kill him on the spot. At the city gate, 2 guards in black armor stopped Lu Chen and asked for his identity badge. He produced his Novice Village No. 9527 Pioneer badge. The guard glanced it over and softened noticeably, confirming he was the first pioneer of Novice Village No. 9527. Entry required a registration fee of 100 silver coins, which Lu Chen paid without hesitation. The system confirmed 101 silver coins spent, and the guard handed back his badge along with a Blackstone City temporary resident emblem, officially marking his entry into the city and opening its local reputation system, currently sitting at 0. Lu Chen's eyes flickered at that. Reputation, it turned out, was tracked by region. His total reputation stood at 105 points. But here in Blackstone City, he'd have to build it up from scratch if he wanted access to special shops, high-tier quests, or NPC permissions. Not a real problem, though. Combat power and resources were the last things he lacked, and reputation was only ever a matter of time. He asked the guard how to reach the class transfer hall, and was told to walk straight down the main street toward the tallest white spire. Though the guard suggested registering at the Adventurers Guild first, since many quests required an adventurer identity and plenty of shops in Blackstone City only dealt in gold coins. Gold coins. That caught his attention. He already had infinite copper and silver coins, but no gold coins yet. He asked whether silver could be exchanged for gold, and the guard, faintly surprised, confirmed it could. 100 silver coins for 1 gold coin at the city's exchange office. Lu Chen smiled. Exactly what he needed. Blackstone City's main street was bustling, a real cut above the Novice Village. Weapon shops, potion shops, scroll shops, auction houses, anything you could think of lined the way, though for now the streets were still mostly filled with NPCs. Walking along, he found himself glancing around more than once at merchants, mercenaries, beauties, temple priests, even orc warriors mounted on giant wolves. The immersion, he thought, was almost too strong. He drew a fair number of stairs himself along the way, mostly because his weapon was simply too flashy to ignore. He soon reached the exchange office the guard had mentioned, where an NPC asked if he needed to exchange currency. He confirmed he wanted silver for gold. The NPC explained the rate: 100 silver coins per gold coin, with a 1 silver coin handling fee per exchange, and asked how much he wanted. He said just 1 for now, laid down 101 silver coins, and the system confirmed the payment and the exchange, granting him 1 gold coin, which entered his inventory with its quantity immediately changed to infinite. This inventory, he thought, was simply absurd. He couldn't even imagine how slow it would be to earn gold coins the normal way. This route was faster by miles, 1 wave of the hand and infinite gold, an unrivaled rush. He asked the NPC right away whether there was an even higher tier currency available for exchange. The NPC paused, then explained that above gold coins were purple gold coins, exchangeable at a rate of 1,000 gold coins per purple gold coin. Though purple gold coins were large-scale transaction currency generally reserved for nobles, chambers of commerce, and high-tier adventurers. Lu Chen's eyes lit up even brighter. "Exchange 1, he said. "What did you say?" The NPC doubted whether he'd heard right when Lu Chen asked to exchange for a purple gold coin, taking out 1,000 gold coins on the spot. The transaction went through, 1,000 gold coins paid, 1 purple gold coin obtained, and the moment it entered his backpack, its quantity changed to infinite. Purple gold coins were infinite too. The exchange NPC just stared, stunned. In all his years working there, he'd never once seen a newly arrived descender exchange for a purple gold coin without so much as blinking, especially when a single purple gold coin was enough to buy a fine residence in Blackstone City. Lu Chen calmly pocketed the coin, thanked the NPC, and turned to leave, the NPC muttering to himself as he watched him go, wondering if descenders these days were really this rich. After walking out of the exchange, Lu Chen didn't head straight for the class transfer hall. With infinite gold coins and purple gold coins now in hand, browsing the shops came first. The happiest thing in the world, he thought, was being able to spend money buying things. Nothing else felt quite as good. And the items in the main city shops were naturally far more advanced than anything back in the novice village, which combined with his own talent made him simply unstoppable. He started at the potion shop, which was more than 10 times the size of the one back in the novice village, its shelves packed with potions of every color. He looked over an intermediate health potion of elite grade, priced at 1 gold coin that restored 500 health points. An intermediate mana potion of the same grade and price restoring 500 mana points. An advanced antidote potion of rare grade for 5 gold coins that cured most poisons below LV 30. A gale potion of rare grade for 10 gold coins that boosted agility by 20% for 5 minutes. And a hawk-eyed potion of rare grade also priced at 10 gold coins that increased critical hit rate by 10% and attack range by 10% for 5 minutes. The longer he looked, the better his mood got. All of these were things he could actually use, especially the Gale Potion and Hawk-Eyed Potion, which would pair enormously well with his Archer Path. He told the shop owner he'd take 1 bottle of each, and the owner's eyes lit up, asking if he was sure. Lu Chen confirmed it, and a string of notifications followed confirming he'd obtained infinite quantities of the Intermediate Health Potion, the Intermediate Mana Potion, the Advanced Antidote Potion, the Gale Potion, and more, his backpack's resources expanding once again. By this point, his backpack slots had long since expanded to 5,000, so space was no longer something he had to worry about. Next, he went to the scroll shop, buying an intermediate town return scroll of elite grade for 2 gold coins that let him return to his bound main city after 5 seconds out of combat. An intermediate random teleport scroll of elite grade for 5 gold coins that teleported him randomly within a 5,000 meter range. A low-level stealth scroll of rare grade for 20 gold coins that granted 30 seconds of stealth broken by attacking or taking damage. And a low-level barrier scroll of rare grade for 30 gold coins that generated a defensive barrier lasting 1 minute. Buying all of it, sweeping up every practical resource the main city stage had to offer. Where other people browsing the shops were spending money, for him it was simply unlocking an infinite resource compendium. The gap between him and everyone else was not a small one. Even the intermediate appraisal scroll, the blank contract, the temporary mercenary contract, the simple camp tent, and the mount rations in the grocery store got bought up one by one. Gold coins were infinite anyway, so it would be a waste not to grab them in case they came in handy later. Once his shopping was done, Lu Chen headed for the Adventurers Guild, where a crowd had gathered at the entrance, many of them players who'd just arrived in the main city and were registering. Inside the hall stood a huge mission wall, but he ignored it and went straight to the registration counter, where a short-haired female receptionist in leather armor asked if he was registering his adventurer identity. He nodded and confirmed, and she told him the basic registration fee was 1 gold coin. He paid it, receiving the Black Iron Adventurer badge and officially becoming a Black Iron Grade Adventurer of Blackstone City, with adventurer grades running from Black Iron up through Bronze, Silver, Gold, Mithril, Obsidian Gold, and finally Legend. The receptionist explained, professionally, that Black Iron Grade adventurers could only take low-level quests, and that promotion to Bronze Grade required completing 3 Black Iron Grade quests or submitting a trophy strong enough to prove his skill. Lu Chen asked whether rare grade boss materials counted, and after a pause, the receptionist confirmed they did. He pulled out a bloodthirsty canine king crystal core and handed it over. Her eyes changed the instant she saw it, remarking that it was a rare-grade beast boss crystal core of complete quality and stable energy, more than sufficient as a promotion voucher. He submitted the bloodthirsty canine king crystal core of rare grade, and thanks to his infinite backpack, the quantity stayed at infinite even after submission. His adventurer grade immediately upgrading to bronze and his Black Stone City reputation rising by 10. The receptionist's attitude toward him noticeably warmed, addressing him as Miskell, Night God, and congratulating him on becoming a bronze-grade adventurer, noting that bronze-grade adventurers could take on certain special investigation quests. Lu Chen glanced back at the quest board, gave it only a light acknowledgement, and turned to leave. Now wasn't the time for quests. Completing his first-class advancement came first. With that, he walked out of the Adventurers Guild and headed toward the tallest white spire at the center of the city. The class transfer hall turned out to be even livelier than the Adventurers Guild, packed with level 10 players and NPCs alike. And the moment Lu Chen stepped in, he was hit with a wall of overlapping chatter. Someone complaining that a normal first-class transfer quest actually demanded soloing 10 level 10 demonic wild wolves. A priest wondering how they were supposed to manage that alone. Another voice suggesting the support route instead, healing injured soldiers for a slightly weaker class specialty. Someone else expressing disbelief that class transfers even carried quest evaluations. With a perfect completion, apparently the only way to unlock additional specialties, and yet another player grumbling that the whole system felt unfair, almost discriminatory. Lu Chen ignored all of it and made straight for the archer instructor stationed in the center of the hall. Before he reached her, though, the fragmented class transfer clue in his backpack reacted on its own, and at the same moment the defective lake lamp lit up with a dim blue glow. A pale blue line, visible only to him, stretched slowly toward a corner of the hall. He followed it with his eyes and found nothing there but a half-closed old door with a faded wooden sign reading Abandoned Archive Room. His eyes lit up. This was it. The normal hall process was built for ordinary players. The real hidden route, as expected, sat outside it entirely. Just then the archer instructor came forward on her own initiative, addressing him as a young archer who'd already hit level 10 and offering to open 3 normal first-class transfer routes for him: Ranger, Sharpshooter, or Gale Shooter. Lu Chen asked whether there were any hidden routes. Her expression shifted, and she warned him not to overreach. Hidden routes were dangerous, and failure wouldn't just cost experience, it could lower his class potential outright. He said nothing, only produced the village chief's recommendation letter, and her attitude sobered immediately at the sight of it, recognizing him as the perfect recommender from the novice village. Then he pulled out the fragmented class transfer clue as well, and her pupils visibly shrank. She recognized it instantly as a clue tied to the Forbidden Hunter of Mirror Lake. Several nearby players caught the words and turned to look, murmuring about a Forbidden Hunter and a hidden class transfer. Flame Young Master, who'd just finished the first ring of his own Fire Mage transfer quest and was on his way out, stopped cold and stared at Lu Chen, demanding to know whether Night God really had a hidden class transfer clue in hand. And the whole hall broke into a stir at that. Lu Chen ignored the stares. The instructor lowered her voice and told him she couldn't open this particular route herself. In all of Blackstone City, only one person was qualified to do so. He answered calmly with a single name: Selina. Her body actually trembled at that, and she asked how he already knew about her. He simply nodded. She studied him a moment longer, then pointed toward the old door in the corner, telling him to go in. If the lamp was willing to light the way for him, he'd find her on his own. But she warned him first that Mirror Lake's Forbidden Hunter wasn't an ordinary hidden class. It had once been expelled from the Blackstone City Class Guild, because that path required hunting one's own shadow. Lu Chen only smiled and said nothing in reply, then walked toward the abandoned archive room while the entire hall watched in stunned silence. Flame Young Master stared after him, muttering that this Night God really did have remarkable luck, and when a teammate asked whether they should look into the route themselves, he answered coldly that they should, and that someone ought to keep a close eye on Lu Chen as well. Pushing the door open, Lu Chen stepped into pitch darkness. The defective lake lamp rose out of his backpack on its own, and its dim blue light slowly grew. From somewhere deep in the dark, a woman's voice spoke, remarking that after so many years, another hunter carrying the aura of Mirror Lake had finally come. Looking up, he found a woman in a gray cloak seated at the far end of a bookshelf, her face hidden in shadow. Identified as Selina, the Shadowless Hunter, once a legendary hunter of Blackstone City, before being expelled from the class guild over a Mirror Lake disaster. She raised her eyes and asked flatly whether he meant to transfer into a forbidden hunter. He nodded, then handed over both the village chief's recommendation letter and the fragmented class transfer clue. She went still for a moment at the sight of them, then let a smile settle at the corner of her mouth, guessing at once that Moore had given him the clue. Remarking, half to herself, that the old man was still trying to find her a successor even now. With a bitter little shake of her head, she agreed to help him open the class transfer quest. A prompt confirmed the quest had been established, asking whether he wanted to begin the special first-class transfer trial, Mirror Lake Forbidden Hunter, with a warning that its difficulty far exceeded ordinary first transfer quests. Failure would cost him a level, cause him to randomly forget a mastered skill, and drop his Blackstone City reputation by 10. Success would grant a completed first-class transfer, a hidden class branch, and additional specialties depending on his trial evaluation. The failure penalty made him flinch slightly. Randomly losing a skill was brutal for most players this early on, when a skill book was worth its weight in gold, and losing a core skill could cut someone's combat power in half. Fortunately, that wasn't a risk that applied to him. He told Selena to start the quest. The special quest unlocked. Enter the Shadow Hunter trial ground and kill his own shadow. Solo only, with the reward being a completed first-class transfer and the Blood Shadow Hunter class. And a note that neither town return scrolls nor random teleport scrolls could be used during the trial. Aside from that restriction, it seemed manageable enough. Right about then, his stomach growled, and a glance at his status bar showed his hunger sitting at 63 out of 100. Between the non-stop grinding, dungeon runs, and travel since his descent, even the inferior meat he'd been eating along the way hadn't kept up with the toll. And he knew that letting hunger drop below 30 would slow his stamina recovery, with a drop below 10 costing him attributes outright. He decided not to worry about it for now, telling himself he'd just eat enough to tide himself over and reward himself properly once the class transfer was done. Then pulled out a portion of roasted gray inferior meat he'd cooked over a bonfire back in the novice village. Average in taste, but a clear step up from the raw stuff, and washed it down with a flask of water, feeling his condition recover quickly. His hunger climbed by 25 points. Selena asked if he was ready. He told her to begin. The Shadow Hunter trial ground opened with a countdown, and in a flash of white light Lu Chen found himself above a pitch-black lake, standing on a huge mirror with another version of himself reflected inside it, one that slowly rose up from beneath the surface. The system marked it as a level 10 Shadow of Night God, a first advancement trial monster with an unknown health total, described as condensed from his own combat traces, carrying projections of some of his skills and equipment, another duplicate to deal with. But this time, Lu Chen wasted no time, popping potions immediately. Rare Grade Gale Potion for a 20% agility boost lasting 5 minutes. Rare Grade Eagle Eye Potion for a 10% critical hit rate increase and 10% attack range increase over the same duration. And an intermediate mana potion to top off his mana. He activated Wind Guardian right after, a cyan shield forming around him, and watched his shadow mirror the exact same move. He only smiled. It could copy his skills, but not his inventory, and began laying binding traps under his feet and along his flanks, 20 of them in one breath. When the Shadow of Night God charged in, a trap flashed black beneath it, immobilizing it for 3 seconds. Lu Chen used the opening to mark it with Mark Prey, boosting damage against it by 35%. Then fired a concussive arrow that slammed into its chest for 1280 damage and triggered a daze on top of the existing immobilization, locking it fully in place. Giving it no room to counter, he followed with a Shadow Strike arrow that pierced its head for 4680 damage, landing a weakness hit and critical hit together and triggering Blood Mirror Strike, which sent a Mirror Shadow arrow chasing right behind it for another 3520. The Shadow's health bar finally appeared, already cut in half. Breaking free of the control, the Shadow of Night God tried to activate Storm Arrow Rain, but Lu Chen beat it to the punch with his own Storm Arrow Rain, arrows raining down and interrupting its skill outright. Its figure flickered and split into 2 black afterimages, and Lu Chen narrowed his eyes at the sight of it trying clones. He pulled out a dozen advanced guiding lake lamps, newly unlocked from restocking at the Blackstone City shops, which, unlike the incomplete lake lamps, couldn't copy tokens but could suppress clone-type items and skills, cutting the clone's attributes by 40%. Declaring he wasn't going to bother competing on potions this time, that this world ran on brains, he raised his bow and chained double shot into armor-piercing arrow, then unleashed Storm Arrow Rain again once its cooldown refunded, shattering both Shadow clones outright. A final hit for 7,200 damage froze the shadow of Night God's body in place before it dissolved into black broken light, swallowed back into Mirror Lake. The system confirmed the kill and marked the special first advancement quest, Hunt Your Own Shadow, as complete with a perfect evaluation, granting him his first advancement, a class change from Archer to Blood Shadow Hunter, along with 3 class specialties: Weakness Hunting, Mirror Shadow Pursuit, and Shadow Blood Perception, plus a lifted level cap and stored experience calculation, which promptly bumped him to level 12 and added 2 years of lifespan. 2 rays of golden light fell over him as his attributes climbed again, and a regional announcement rang out across Blackstone City, declaring that Night God had become the first descender in the city to complete the special first advancement with a perfect evaluation, rewarding him with 100 Blackstone City reputation and the special title Shadow Hunter Pioneer, while also opening the city's class advancement ranking list with Night God sitting at the top. The reaction across the city was disbelief. Players who'd only just arrived from various novice villages, already considered top talents in their own right, couldn't fathom how someone had pulled off a first advancement this fast, let alone a special one with a perfect score. Some outright accusing him of the Archer with the rare grade +10 bow, Night God, of hacking. Flame Young Master, standing in the hall, stared at his own result. An ordinary fire mage first advancement rated merely excellent, and found the words strangely humiliating next to Lu Chen's perfect special advancement, muttering darkly that this guy was trouble. Back in the archives room, Lu Chen reappeared to find Selena impressed at how quickly he'd cleared the trial. Looking over his new class panel, he reviewed the details of his new class, Blood Shadow Hunter, positioned as a special hunting type archer, Weakness Hunting, which increased damage by 50% on a hit weakness and an additional 20% if the target was bleeding, marked, slowed, or immobilized. Mirror Shadow Pursuit, giving a chance to spawn a pursuing Mirror Shadow arrow on a weakness hit, and Shadow Blood Perception, letting him sense injured, hidden, shadow-formed, or mirror-type units within a certain range. He judged it powerful, especially the first and third specialties, one sharpening his burst damage, the other patching his scouting weaknesses, clearly built to counter classes like assassins. Selena's approval also came with a reward: 20 Blackstone City reputation and a special class skill book, Shadow Blood Mark, which entered his inventory at infinite quantity. The skill's effect marked a target into a Shadow Blood state, dealing bonus Shadow Blood damage on a weakness hit, with the mark automatically transferring to a nearby enemy, up to 5, if the target died. Recognizing it as tailor-made for farming, with bonus weakness damage and automatic chaining to the next target, he wondered idly whose design this looked suspiciously like, then learned it immediately, reaching proficiency level 1. With his inventory stocked full of skill books for it, he pushed it straight to level 10, where its effect scaled up, marking a target for 120 seconds, dealing bonus Shadow Blood damage equal to 150% physical damage on a weakness hit, and transferring automatically to the nearest enemy within 50 meters upon the target's death, chaining up to 20 times in a row. Satisfied, Lu Chen closed the skill panel, thanked Selena briefly, and left the archives, heading for the Silver Deer Inn, currently the safest and most expensive inn in Blackstone City. After a long, busy day, he figured he'd earned a proper rest.